Online work is moving ahead.
This is just checking audio online. Thank you.
I can hear you.
Thank you so much.
Are we live and streaming now? We're good? Thank you, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to the regularly scheduled council meeting for April 28th. My name is Kevin Murdoch. I am the Mayor of Oak Bay. We have one councillor, two councillors joining us online. Councillor Braithwaite, who's joining us from out of town, and we have a second Councillor Green, who is on her way and will be joining us a few minutes late. As we call the meeting to order, we just want to acknowledge that we hold these meetings on the traditional territories of the Coast and Strait Salish people, specifically the Lekwungen people known today as the Songhees and Kasapsum nations, and that their connections to these waters and lands continues to this day. Up first, item 2.1 is approval of the agenda. Can I have a mover and seconder? Any discussion on the agenda? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Councillor Braithwaite, I will expect you to speak if you're in opposition to anything, as you are online. We have adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting of April 14th. Same mover and seconder. For that, is there any changes or corrections, amendments to the minutes? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Then we have receipt of the committee minutes, which were approved at the committee of the whole. So we can have a mover for all four of those to receive them. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. My remarks will be fairly brief. I do want to acknowledge that we are here on election day, and so I'm sure many people will be watching their phones carefully to get results throughout the course of this. Certainly, many of us are curious about the results, but certainly appreciate the importance of democracy, and certainly hope everybody had a chance to get out and vote. I want to just acknowledge and thank both council and members of the public and staff for attending the town hall. That was the second one we had this year on April 24th. For the informal format where we gather in a circle, and I think we had about 120 or so people show up this time to ask questions and make comments, and council's there to just answer those questions and hear those comments. So it's a regular format that we're trying to do. As I said at that meeting, if there's anything that people wish to talk to council about in terms of some more themed type town halls, we would be happy to do that as well, and you can always just send those to us with some suggestions. And with that, I'm just going to note this is an incredibly long agenda. We've also added another meeting on May 5th because there's a lot of items coming forward to council at this time, and so we're trying to get through a lot of business. And so I'm just going to ask with great courtesy that all speakers be brief, questions be kept to the point, answers be kept brief, and that we keep focused on the business at hand here today. So with that, we move to the public participation period, the question and answer period. Again, this is similar to the town hall. It's an opportunity for members of the public to talk to council. This section is for items that are not on the agenda tonight, so this is any matters of general interest. I'm going to ask, just in the interest of time, and really following our intended procedure, if you're wanting to talk to land use items that will be coming to council, i.e. if they progress, they would come to a public hearing, that you wait until that opportunity to use it. I won't stop you tonight, but I'm just going to ask as a courtesy for the amount of time we have tonight to perhaps make your comments in a general terms about land use issues as opposed to any specific applications that will be coming to council. But with that, I invite any members of the public who wish either online. If you're online, just raise your hand, or if you're in person, you can come forward. Yep, please come forward. And the process here is straightforward. Have a seat at the table. You can just state your name, first and last name, and then just your municipality of residence. You don't have to give your home address. And push the button in the middle, and you have up to 3 minutes to speak to council.
Martin Lampa. I've lived at 3231 Woodburn for the last almost 10 years. And my wife and I very much have enjoyed integrating into the community. And we would like, what she wanted me to extend to you is that if any of the councillors would like to go and walk around, it would be just a great experience to get a sense of what Woodburn is like. Because of course, I'm speaking about 2298 Lansdowne, which is a single unit dwelling that's going to be converted into 13 townhouses. And it basically backs or fronts onto Woodburn as well as to Lansdowne. And that's sort of one of the major issues of that development. And it does not meet Oak Bay's official community plan. It doesn't come anywhere near that.
So
and my
Mr.
only
Lampa-
question,
go ahead.
my closing comments would be that I was just hoping that we could just going forward, if you guys, the council, and us as the community would dictate how things go and not developers. That's really all I'm asking. The agendas are completely different. That's why I'd like it to be presented that way. And thank you very much for the opportunity to have
Thank you.
a couple words.
No, that's great. Thank you. And that is the kind of thing. I can have a seat. Yeah, next person can come forward if they wish. I do want to kind of keep topics away from specific applications, but I think that general comment is welcome. And by all means, if that application does come to council, if council decides that they want to consider it, then it would come to a public hearing. There'd be an opportunity for specific comments on the application. Welcome.
Hi, I'm back again. Good evening, Mayor and councillors. I'm Yvette Wells. I live on Woodburn here in Oak Bay. Tonight, I'm here to talk about readiness. My neighborhood and many other neighborhoods across Oak Bay are facing significant pressure to increase residential density, an issue that in some cases makes sense and in other cases does not. Readiness in this context means we have appropriate mechanisms in place to evaluate and understand how proposed developments will impact existing infrastructure and services, guard against negative impacts on neighbors and neighborhoods, ensure alignment with the official community plan, and address cumulative effects of multiple proposals, particularly when there are many in close proximity. In order to thoughtfully consider proposed developments in Oak Bay, we need to have tools in place. And this is not in any way an exhaustive list. I know I only have 3 minutes, but we don't have a completed community plan, official community plan. Not updated since 2014. With the revision process currently underway, Council's own stated goal in this endeavor is to establish how land can be used, what types of buildings and structures are allowed, siting regulations, and the associated densities in different zones. We're just not there yet. Blasting regulations. Now 5 years in the making, the conclusion has been delayed again. Seeking increasing building footprints, developers are blasting significant portions of target lots without any determination of the impacts to adjacent properties from ground vibration, settlement, air blast, and overbreak. Shadowing bylaw and regulations don't exist at all. I don't know if they're planned or not. These regulations should restrict the impact of new developments on neighboring properties and public spaces. Large-scale developments next to single-story residential units will in some case obliterate sunshine for many months of the year. Without being able to assess proposed developments because of gaps in administrative guidance, it is not possible to determine impacts on access and traffic, neighboring houses, blasting hazards, Gary Oak stands and other natural features, costs and carrying capacity of infrastructure and public services. Submissions by proponents provide few substantive details on any of these issues. In short, I don't think Oak Bay is ready. In doing the work necessary to get there, we've started, we're doing it, but we aren't there yet. We need to consider critical factors that allow for proactive growth management, efficient use of resources, resilience, community well-being, quality of life, and last but certainly not least, public trust. There are environmental, social, and economic boundaries that should and can restrict how much and how fast a community can grow without causing harm. As taxpayers and voters, we want and need more than an ad hoc knee-jerk reaction to the objectives of the developers, which do not align, in many cases, with neighborhoods. Oak Bay Council has a responsibility to listen and act in a way that does not cause harm. We need to slow this roll and do the work necessary to properly evaluate what's happening in this community. Thank you.
Thank you. I was just about to ask you to wrap it up. The timing was good. Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak to council on matters, again, not on the agenda? Please go ahead. The name and municipality of residence.
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Dr. Allison Ross, and I've resided at 3171 Woodburn Avenue for 20 years. I'd like to express my profound opposition to the proposed development at 2298 Lansdowne Road. Prior to purchasing my home in 2005...
Can I just ask one favor? Just, again, in the interest that we will have an opportunity for public input on this when and if it gets to the point of a public hearing. So maybe just make your comments in general terms about development and not to the specific application.
Well, I think that the development is far too large for the community in which we live. Much like Yvette, I think that we're not ready for this type of development. I think the infrastructure isn't there. And a 13-unit proposal on a single-family lot, which now is zoned as for a fourplex, I think is unreasonable. So when do I get to say my piece?
The process here, anybody can make an application. We can't stop that application from happening. It's
Yep.
going through its process right now. It will likely find its way to council, and council will make a determination at that time if it meets the enough criteria, it sort of meets the threshold where we'd like to seek public input, and there will be a public hearing. In the case of a public hearing, it'll be advertised quite broadly, and at
And
that
will
point-
everybody get the opportunity to speak?
Everybody gets a
Every
chance to-
single person?
Yes,
Okay,
100%.
okay.
Yeah, that's the intention of the process. But again, you can speak in general terms here. That's totally
Well,
welcome.
in general terms, I don't think we're ready. I think, from my own personal perspective, I live on a dead-end road, which is not a cul-de-sac. And I think traffic access that's being proposed is frankly irresponsible to be diverting traffic to residential roads, school zones, and proposed bike corridors. So I think that traffic should be diverted to more major arteries, Lansdowne Road being one of them. And I think that I'm not anti-development by any stretch, but I think we need to do this carefully, because I think once you make decisions, I think there's going to be potential unrecognized consequences. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I welcome the next speaker to come forward, please.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Mayor. Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Bob DeFay, and I'm representing my late brother, Tom DeFay, who's an owner of 2315 Henderson Road. So I thank you for the opportunity to speak very briefly in general to the question of development at the proposal of 3223 Henderson, a subdivision.
So just for the record, we have a little bit of an extra complexity at 3223 Henderson. We can't hear about it by law, by the province. We're not allowed any public input into that. You can talk in general terms as long as you don't mention an address.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So anyway, in general terms, I would like to, and I will not reiterate, but I would like to support the statements that Yvette Wells made just a few minutes ago about readiness, about preparation, about the need to have council examine very carefully each and every proposal, I know you do, in the context of the geography, the surrounding community, the impacts and implications. I'm concerned about the official community plan needing to be up to date. And I'm also concerned at the fact that blasting, which is ubiquitous in this part of the world. We live on Vancouver Island, there's a lot of rock. But the issue of blasting is certainly a major consideration to the people who are the neighbors, the other people who are in Oak Bay, and who deserve a duty of care and consideration. And the blasting policy, the regulations are awaiting approval. And having read those and having discussed those with a number of neighbors, I think for all people who are facing development situations close by, it's really important that the council consider that blasting regulation soon, because I think it does, upon my reading of it, afford an opportunity to offer a measure further of protection to the individuals who surround them. So thank you. I won't say any more.
Thank you for your general comments. Any other people wish to speak? Yeah, please come forward.
My leg is asleep, so I don't feel that very why. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name's Leona Fournette, and I live in Oak Bay. I'm here to talk about unintended consequences or collateral damage. Currently, there are a number of rezoning applications for the division of existing single-family lots in Oak Bay. I'm not going to talk to specifics, but rather the precedents that approving those right now prior to the revision of the community plan would be somewhat irresponsible. You know, people come forward, they want to rezone their property for various personal reasons. And as we have learned with 2199 Lansdowne Avenue, once the subdivision is granted, we now, under Bill 44, lose control of what can be developed on that site as long as it fits within Bill 44. My concern is that once was one, then becomes four, and when you subdivide, becomes 8. And I think that level of heavy densification in residential areas is not necessary, not to the degree that we will see it proliferate as time goes on and people recognize what they can gain from subdividing not only larger than normal lots, but just normal lots and less than normal lots. So I am asking that we defer any of those decisions until we know what our community is going to come forward with for densification. I think we have a strong plan existing, and based on what's happening in the broader context of the Capital Regional District, I think we have great opportunity to provide densification where it fits, not where it sits. That's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Fournette. Anybody else wish to come forward and speak to council? I'm looking online as well. If there's anybody there that wishes to raise your hand, please do so within the Zoom app. And back to this room. All right, I don't see any, so I'm going to come back to the agenda at hand, which allows us to move on to item number 7.1, which is award of a contract for Carnarvon Park main buildings and park amenities. Mr. Graham is in the room with us. He's our Facilities and Asset Management Program Manager. Welcome, Mr. Graham.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just a few short months ago in December, we presented the 2024 Carnarvon Park Master Plan, where you approved resolutions on the main building space plan, sustainability goals, the park amenities that we would be upgrading, the phased approach, and the overall program budget. The resulting program of projects, the group of projects we presented in December, works out to, we broke it down into 8 different tender packages over 3 phases, taking approximately 6 years. We designed the program this way to cause as little disruption to the operations of the park as possible, although we do acknowledge at some points during the construction there will be some areas that will have to be temporarily closed. Since December, staff have written and publicly posted a comprehensive request for proposal for the architectural and engineering team to undertake this work to create those tender packages for us. The park renewal project, surprisingly, it generated a huge amount of interest in the architectural community. We had 8 compliant proposals from interested firms. The selection committee scored the proposals on technical merits as well as fees, and through the scoring process, the committee selected Shape Architecture as the top firm. Being this program is made up of 3 major phases with 8 tender packages, as I mentioned, spanning over a significant length of time, 6 years, we wanted to ensure that we had price certainty over those 6 years. So what we did as part of this RFP is we asked proponents to submit pricing for the full scope of work, right through tendering, construction, and a 1-year warranty period afterwards. So through that, the selection committee scored on that total fee. However, the council priority project is to take the Carnarvon Park project to tender ready point only, so we would be issuing a contract at this time just for that work project. So therefore, we had the proponents break out the cost to complete that engagement for the architectural, engineering design, specifications, and complete the, tender ready, often called on the shelf packages for us. So the contract award we're recommending tonight is just for that tender ready phase, the tender ready packages. Those shovel ready packages, they can be tendered if specific grant opportunities present themselves or at the direction of council. Once we receive council direction for tender and construction, that total fee will become applicable. But it's still a known value over the 6 years. It's a fixed fee for those 6 year period. So I just want to clarify, you're going to see 2 values in the staff report, the total fee, as well as what we're talking tonight is the tender package fee. But the tender package fee is what we're recommending tonight. So the project team is here to answer any questions you might have, and that's all I think I needed to introduce.
Great, thank you very much. I'll turn to council. Are there any questions of staff on this report? Councillor Smart?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mayor, to staff, thank you for such a thorough report. It really gives a snapshot of visualizing where we're headed. My only question was just regards to disruption of services in the different tender packages, and I just wondered, is there anything that should be highlighted for council around, like when we look, for instance, at like when the pickleball courts are going to be created or when the EV charging is coming? Is there a period of time where there's an existing asset in Carnarvon Park that will sort of be out of service for a long period of time that we should be aware of? Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr.
The only one in our project planning so far are the tennis and pickleball courts. They moved slightly and they're being resurfaced. The main building will be bringing in temporary washroom facilities and we'll be continuing the servicing. There'll also be a short period of time, although we're trying very hard to do it in the, we'll call it the off-season for the splash park. But when we rebuild the splash park, hopefully that aligns very carefully with the period where it would be too cold to use, and it would be available for the children and the families to use when it warms up again. So the only one that I can see that will be difficult to get around with is the tennis and pickleball.
Mr. Smart?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to staff. So just to clarify then, and I realize tonight this isn't a main question ahead of us, so I don't want to get off track too much, but this is the first time we're seeing this phasing, so I just wanted to have the opportunity to ask, can you elaborate on how large of a time and will the district be providing those services elsewhere in the district?
Mr. Graham?
We do have tennis courts elsewhere in the district, so we're well covered on those. But pickleball, we may have to make some arrangements elsewhere. Right now, we don't have a plan, but pickleball tends to be played year-round, with the heavier periods being when the weather's nicer. So again, we're trying to schedule the resurfacing and the rebuilding of the structure in as much off-season as we possibly can.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councilor Patterson.
Thank you, Mayor. It's not really a question. I just wanted to move receipt and move the staff recommendation.
Sure, we'll take a move receipt. Is there a seconder for receipt? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? No, we don't usually debate receipt. It's just a formality. Councilor Patterson, do you wish to continue?
No, I want to move the staff recommendation to that the contract be for the Carnarvon Park main building and park amenities and detailed design be awarded to Shape Architecture in accordance with the terms. I already checked it against the budget, so it's good on that. And I think that we need to get to this stage before we can, we may face decisions along the way, but I think that this is the starting point that we need to be at to move this forward. Thank you.
And it was seconded? Moved and seconded, thank you. Any other debate? Don't see any. I do appreciate staff bringing this forward and the detail. I certainly, to the point there, I mean, there is a design aspect of this where there'll be some additional consultation on some of the specifics of these pieces. So for those who live in that area, who don't, but have an interest in Carnarvon Park, there will be an opportunity to provide some additional feedback in terms of some of the specifics as they get finalized. So with that, I will call the question. All those in favor? Any online? Any opposed? Again, Councillor Braithwaite, just would expect you to verbalize and speak against if you were opposed, so we'll take it as a in favor. That passes. Thank you. Moving, that is 7.1. Moving then to 8.1. We have a comprehensive asset management plan, phase 1 strategy. So that we have Ms. LaChance here, and I believe consultants as well for helping with the presentation. Is that correct? Welcome.
Yes, thank you very much, Your Worship. As my colleagues are getting settled, they are joining me to present this item this evening to Council. I'm joined by our consultants, Sebastian Lampo and Sharif Kanay from Resultat. And also joining me is my counterpart in all that I do these days on asset management is David Graham, also here to answer questions for Council tonight. I'd like to start off by saying a brief thank you to all the staff across departments who contributed directly in the phase 1 work presented here to Council tonight. This process benefited from their contributions, their candor in the process, as well as their commitments to asset management. Before I pass over to our consultants for their presentation, I'd like to just give a small brief introduction to the material. And then of course I can answer any questions after the presentation. This report is designed to report back to Council on that phase 1 work completed. It's also to seek Council approval or direction, specifically on the strategy, policy, and related program roadmap. This work is part of the Council-approved multi-year, multi-phase asset management program and is in response to Council priority number 25 and 38. If approved, phase 1 would reach substantial completion as defined in the approved project charter from July 2023, and the program would then transition into an implementation type phase, which would see the community of practice actively implementing and designing standards. Excuse me. Of note for Council is that the dates for each phase have been revised as a result of a changeover in the program director. But as you'll note in the report, the scope and approach remain largely unchanged. The strategy and policy for Council approval have both been revised to reflect the evolved maturity levels since the original documents were created a number of years ago. I'd like to generalize in saying pre-2020. The roadmap, I think, is notable to pay attention to for Council this evening. It is an integrated plan. It has been informed by the maturity assessment, so includes targets and those stretch goals that we will be implementing through that community of practice within the organization. And although the large categories of work that we have ahead of us are characterized the same way, we're in a much better position to move into phase 2 with this work now complete. I'll now pass over for the brief presentation, and again, happy to answer any questions after. Thank you, Your Worship.
Sure, thank you very much. I'm going to try and keep the presentation to around 10 minutes so we can get to have time for questions and get to those things. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having us here. My name is Sharif Inawi, and I'm here with my colleague Sebastian Lampo with Resultat, the consulting company. And we were working throughout most of 2024 to work on some of these initial steps, again, as part of phase 1, as Rihanna mentioned. So I'll keep it brief. I'm not going to go through everything in detail that you can read, obviously, but I wanted to highlight a few points today. So just to look at the big picture in terms of what we mean by asset management here, I wanted to use a diagram often used by Asset Management BC. And you don't have to go into too much detail, but I wanted to emphasize that it's a loop, as you can see, so it does go circular, which means that as you go through these big process steps of assess, plan, implement, it does eventually go back into the assess. So at the end of the presentation, you'll see that perhaps unfortunately, you might see some of the same steps again. So as part of phase 3, we've added some of the steps that we've mentioned already in terms of the policy and strategy in the end there, which means that that's something that is done usually on a 5-year cycle or so. So you'll be seeing that again. The parts that you see highlighted in red and yellow specifically as part of assess is we have here the assessing the asset management practice, and that's what we've worked with for most of 2024, looking at a maturity assessment of the asset management practice, and basically just getting an idea of how asset management is progressing within Oak Bay. And this is not meant to be a framework to assess against other municipalities, but rather to assess and establish a baseline so that when this is done again, and again, this doesn't have to be done very regularly, but usually after major changes, so after a few of the items on the roadmap have been put together, then it's a good idea to run an assessment again, and then that will be the assessment against that. So to show progress, we've used the framework that is recommended by Asset Management BC because it has a very detailed way of looking at some of the items like the data and the people and information for assets. And we'll get into that very briefly. Then the parts that you see in yellow have to do with the asset management policy and strategy. Now, there was a question that might have come up, and I'll try to answer some of them in anticipation, perhaps, because there was already a strategy, obviously, and policy back from 2018 and 2021. And the question was, why work through a different policy? Again, the main idea here is to establish, and I'm going to mention that word a lot, alignment between asset management. So it's not just a matter of taking what's in industry or what consultants bring and saying, can we take it as is, but rather trying to get something that works for Oak Bay or the Oak Bay way. So because there were priority projects approved by council that had specific items, also because of the council priorities that were put together, so looking at 2022 to 2026, we wanted to make sure that the asset management practice was in line with that. So I'm going to move forward to there you go. I think I might have moved too far. To an item that I mentioned a lot, so I said alignment, but what we use within asset management is usually the term line of sight. The importance here is looking at how we can translate some of the items, and I've made a selection. This is meant to be for illustration. It was not part of the analysis of things that you would see within the strategic goals. So I think you'll be very familiar with the terms of livability, transportation, and climate change environment in that case. And then trying to tie these a bit better to what we would be using within a lot of the technical terms for facilities or for developments generally. So the question would be, if we are to do a lot of the asset management work and have a robust program, what is needed in terms of a line of sight? And what we mean by that is, what are the steps needed before we can implement anything? Because it's quite easy to bring in a piece of software for asset management that would tell you what projects to implement first. So there's a lot of prioritization software pieces. But it wouldn't work as well unless we have this line of sight. So what you can see is that from the left to the right here, if we can go through any of the documents, and in this case, something like the strategic goals, and come up with some of the percentages in terms of goals, like a percentage of sewer separation, greenhouse gas emissions. The question would be, how can we use the assets to support this service? So if this is going to be a strategic goal, how can we do that? And in some cases, the asset base as it is might be enough. In some cases, you might need to build more. In some cases, you might need to do some kind of a capital project or increase capacity. So multiple things that can be done. Now, to do that, obviously, there's a certain kind of life cycle asset management strategy that needs to be done because it does change operations and maintenance and such. And as you can see, I'm going right bit by bit until it comes to a financial strategy. And it doesn't go in one direction only, because when you get to the financial strategy, the question is, okay, how much is it going to take to achieve the service using the asset base? So what kind of change needs to be made? For example, if I take the first example up top, percentage of sewer separation, you can see that that might need, let's say, 2 kilometers of new pipes installed. So what is the cost of doing that? Does that cause some spikes? If I need to do that in 5 years, can I go ahead and start a reserve fund early on, because I know that's coming down the line, so that we can do some kind of annual budgeting in that case? That would be a bit more smooth. And then the same question goes the other way. If the funding is not available, so the financial strategy would need to look at what happens in terms of risk. So if I'm not able to achieve a service, you can easily see that up front. So to highlight the line of sight is really to highlight why some steps that will come up later on when I go through the roadmap need to be done before implementation goes through. And that's a lot of the work that we did in phase 1.
Mr. Hino, I just want to point out, I suggested we try and keep the presentation around 10 minutes. We're 8 minutes into the 10-minute presentation right now, and I think you had lots more to go through. So I just want to ask you to kind of just be pointed as you go through it. Just keep the key points where it comes to the governance level. Thank you.
And I wasn't going to go through the maturity assessment in detail, but if anyone has questions, absolutely, I'll go back through the slides. I wanted to keep some time for questions. So I was going to go through just again this slide and then the last slide on the roadmap. Going from establishing a line of sight, I wanted to highlight again that the documents that we mentioned, whether it's the asset management policy or strategy or the roadmap, do not exist in a void. They are part of a bigger picture. So master plans are something that you see a lot, financial plans that we already have, and they all feed in, whether it comes from the strategic initiatives or down to reporting and implementation. So as I said, I'm not going into the maturity assessment, but what I do want to emphasize is that after we went through the maturity assessment, we identified some actions to fill some of the gaps, and again, I'm happy to go through it later on. But you see that as part of phase 1, we've already done the work that needs to be put together, especially for the asset management strategy and policy. There is some work that still needs to be done, and a lot of it has to do with looking at data and condition to inform any work that needs to be done afterwards. A big item that you see in there as well towards the end of phase 1 is an enterprise asset management software implementation. So that is a big piece. It's basically where a lot of the data that would be collected would go, and that would enable a lot more reporting that's a bit more seamless across the different service areas and departments. You'll also see that we have other phases as well that come after that. I'd like to take any questions if you have about any of them specifically, because each of them has a reference to one of the gaps that we identified. And then in the end, you'll see in yellow, I've highlighted, again, in the very end, some of the ones that you would not have seen on the council priority projects. But those are natural asset inventory registers, just because it is something that a lot of municipalities are looking at now, in addition to redoing the asset management maturity assessment. And then that will likely result in doing, again, the policy and strategy as a refresh. So with that, we would like to take any questions that you have.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Definitely within that 10 minutes, so thank you. I just saw the multitude of slides that were potential, so thank you. Going to turn to members of council, both in person and online. I have Councillor Green online. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and through you to the consultant. Thank you so much for the report. My question is, I think a member of the public actually raised this earlier this evening during the public participation period. And I'm just wondering, can you comment on our capacity with our existing asset system, our capacity to continue to support high density in Oak Bay? So it's just a general question, maybe one that you cannot answer tonight, but I would be interested to know what our capacity looks like and any of the risk factors around supporting heavier density with aging infrastructure. Thank you.
I'll give that to Mr. Johnson. You can hand it over to the consultants if you wish.
Thank you. Through your worship, I would love the opportunity to jump in maybe before passing it over. I think just hearing it tonight and then having a follow-up question really reiterates that, asset management activities, maturity, data, systems is all so that we can be better informed as we make decisions. Excuse me, just... there's not enough allergy pills this time of year for me, but and so sorry to take that interlude there, but so when it relates to the broad answer around do we have enough capacity, really what we want to be looking at is the individual system plans that we have in place and we're currently developing. The levels of service, both customer and technical, really have to be in place before we can even answer those questions with a surety. Those levels of service will be set with council in a meaningful way, and condition assessments are either have been recently completed or are going to be underway. All of that information will come back to council for making those decisions going forward. And so I don't know that I can even pass it off. But I'll just take a moment to try to pass it off to see if there's some additional comments from the consultants.
Thank you, Rihanna. And not to comment on the specifics for Oak Bay, but just recognizing the challenges from a municipal perspective. What we're seeing across our client base and across Canada is the difficulty between increasing density and the challenges that brings for the current residents, and especially those who have lived in that area for a long time. I myself live in a low density zoning area, and I see that densification compared to the increased tax density, tax revenue density that higher zoning brings with the higher financial pressure with low density. So from a municipal financial sustainability, assets are more effective with higher density. However, the balance between the density and that financial capacity is a decision that only council can make.
Anything else, Councillor
Thank
Green?
you. Thank you to both the director and the consultant. And I think my question was probably impossible to answer, but I wanted it to be considered as we go forward on densifying. And it was more about the status of our asset management underground and how we can support density as it evolves. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. I have Councillor Patterson and Smart, then Appleton.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. A few questions I have. I'm just wondering about the model that is seen here and how well it can interface with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities asset management readiness scale comparison.
Yes,
Will it
I'm very
interface
familiar
well?
with it.
Yeah, I'm sure you are.
Please go ahead, Ms. Is it Hinaway or Kinaway? How do I pronounce her name? Sorry.
Kinawi, yeah.
Kinaway, okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
sure. Do you want me to go ahead, yeah? Yeah. So I happen to sit on the committee that put together the FCM readiness scale, so very familiar with it. They're both meant to simplify the maturity assessment and readiness for municipalities. They're not very different. The asset management BC one actually has a better focus when it comes to the people part or capacity to do the work. And I've used both of them. In a lot of cases, you can easily take the work. So if you decide, for example, for the next assessment to use the FCM one, that is very possible. However, I am in the knowledge of the fact that in the next 2 years or so, we will be seeing less and less people use the Federation of Canadian Municipalities index.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson?
Yes, thank you for that response. It does say in the report that the various departments will develop their own implementation plans, which I understand to a certain level. But how will reporting be standardized across departments so that when it comes back to council, we're looking at kind of a standardized report out overall for all of the departments?
Ms. Lachance?
Yes, thank you, through your worship. That's an excellent question as it relates to getting direction and discussion with council this evening. We're in that phase of transitioning from the planning stage, so having very standardized statements of strategy and policy to follow across all departments, and then transitioning into that implementation phase where if you take an example of additional inventory, asset inventory data, how will that be compiled? And so absolutely, we're still seeking to have standards around how assets will be broken down. For example, in the Parks Department, a building is a building, and we're going to have standards that we follow as outlined in the report that will cover all departments. But how each department will show up in terms of the resources that they apply, that they approach to inventory, the approach to maintaining that inventory, the approach to planning, relying on that inventory, really does need to be in relationship to the underlying line of business. And so I think that's the distinction I'd hope to share in response to that question tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson?
Thank you. And I guess the big question on my mind out of this is I see certainly reference to a 20-year capital plan. My interest is really in a realistic target for a fairly solid 10-year capital plan and 10-year financial plan, because I think that that horizon has a lot more realistic analysis to it. 20 years goes quite far out, and I know that once you start looking at everything, 20 years might seem fine, and it is in the longer term, but realistically to align the finances and the capital projects, I'm just hoping for a 10-year capital plan, because right now we only really have a 1-year annual plan.
Ms. Lachance, do you wish to comment?
Yes, thank you. I can absolutely, through your worship, take that feedback. Absolutely. There are plans. Sorry, just let me, excuse me. There are plans that exist in some of the departments that are already 10, 25-year plans, and in some cases, systems will have an idea of a system that needs to be replaced over longer term for linear assets, 35 years in some cases. And we do know our existing asset base and that renewal plan that's going to be needed over time. But the original project scoping approved through council was targeting that 20-year plan really to surface at the end of this multi-activity exercise, a plan that was fairly above reproach. So you'd be able to have a risk-informed, prioritized 20-year plan over the major and critical assets. And so that's a very direct approach and has informed our project scoping and work plan. There are other opportunities in terms of understanding what's in the 10-year, or perhaps taking the 5-year and using that as a basis of some planning activities. So really interested in taking that feedback from you tonight as we take this phase 1 completion into phase 2.
I have Councillor Smart and then Appleton.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mayor, to staff and the consultant as applicable. My question builds upon Councillor Patterson's recent question, and it's with regards both to the 20-year capital plan, but also the natural asset inventory, and it's with regards to looking at the roadmap that's been laid out. And I really appreciate how the report has really fleshed out all the important groundwork and process that needs to happen to get to these ultimate goals. So my question is really around, in the next 0 to 2 years, where we're not even close to getting to our 20-year capital plan or our natural assets inventory. Obviously, council's making a lot of decisions at this table where we wish we had those now, to the extent that we're going to have them in the future. So I'm wondering if it could be elaborated on a little bit more when I see the council asset management workshop and some of the other things that'll be happening within 0 to 2 years. Are we going to be able to touch on, at a very outline level, the information we have now coordinated as best as it can for a 20-year capital plan? And do we really have to wait 5 years to get to our natural asset inventory, or can it be more integrated?
Ms. Legence?
Absolutely. Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. I'll do my best. There is a lot there, and I get fairly excited about asset management. I do want to touch on a couple of points specifically. We're, again, operating off of the existing project charter that was approved through council. I can very much see, because I am still fresh eyes to that file, a balancing of resourcing, cost implications, but doing the necessary and mandatory work to getting to a 20-year plan that we can actually make decisions and rely on. Because there's, as an example, implications to financing strategies that will really require that 20-year plan is stable. So that must be election coverage there. And so I don't want to lose a couple of threads there that really, when we move into the implementation phase, we're moving all parties as part of the capital decision-making for the district into the maturity evolution. And so the workshops upcoming will be designed to involve council in the decision-making framework. And that'll include some, reference to natural assets and how does that translate to the bottom line. The other aspect is that climate action plan and program has been approved by council. That absolutely has immediate, in the 0 to 2 years, impact on asset decisions. So that will be integrated in, and you will see that. So if I'm circling back directly to the point about what kind of progress will we see that and have already seen that within the police services, where they're greening the fleet. And we're sort of learning through that curve, that there's some other implications. In that case, it was the additional charging stations that were needed to support that fleet. But we'll move through that together. So it's not only a staff exercise. Council will be involved. And I always call it the rubber's hitting the road in the next phase. And then also staff, we'd be looking to mature. And so where there are plans in place that are pretty stable and solid. And those are already in some ways being unpacked to council in reports that you're receiving. But that can continue as we go forward and look to mature together on the asset management roadmap. And I think I'll stop there, but I'm sure I missed something.
No, that's good. Thank you. Anything else, Councillor Smart?
Thank you. That was an excellent summary considering how many questions I packed into one question. So thank you so much for that.
Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to our guests. Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm probably interested, just in the context of this discussion, to sort of zoom out to a little bit of a broader view and picking up on something that Councillor Patterson mentioned. It's a well-known, I think it's getting to be more and more well understood in the public that asset management and asset, essentially investment deficit in communities all across Canada is pervasive. Well, it is an across Canada problem and an issue that we're wrangling with. And as was mentioned, the FCM avenue is one where municipalities and local governments are raising the subject of infrastructure investment on a national scale. So to what extent is what is presented here representing a move towards a more standardized or harmonized assessment of infrastructure such that we can have a common discussion at a national level about these kinds of questions?
I'm handing it to whoever wishes to take it.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll pass over to the consultants, just knowing that as we work with consultants, there is a intrinsic benefit that they're exposed to other jurisdictions and other entities. I'll go ahead and pass that over.
Mr. Kennelly?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Appleton. It's generally, as you said, it is asset management happens to be something that's discussed nationally. It happens to be that just in 2 weeks we'll be in Laval discussing that at a conference across a lot of municipalities as well. The consensus is that, as you mentioned, there is an infrastructure gap almost across, whether it's a municipality of 100 population or a municipality of 2 million. And there are issues with handling the deficit, where a lot of municipalities have realized right now, across North America, even not just Canada, that they have a 20-year backlog in some cases. So they know that there's growth, they know there's densification, but they're also trying to deal with what is coming up. They also realize there is a big problem with data. So I was just in conversation last week with a few municipalities, some of which have had very good established programs, and they estimate that they have about 30% of their assets that they know almost nothing about in terms of good data to work with. So it is quite pervasive. I think you see that whether it's the Canadian government at a federal level or otherwise are trying to run a census on data for infrastructure as much as they can, try to find as much information as possible. But the problem persists. The accuracy from that, the accuracy of putting together capital plans, which we just discussed as well, is quite affected by that.
Thank you.
Did that answer all your questions?
Please continue, Councillor Appleton. Yeah.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up, Your Worship, and that is useful. Thank you. So to what extent is, I mean, I think the Oak Bay, as a relatively small-sized municipality, can take a fair bit of pride in terms of investing a fair bit of effort and thought process and investment of resources into looking at assets as compared to some other municipalities our size. And so I think what our community would be interested in hearing is, you know, is that information now becoming, and we've struggled is not the right word, because our staff have worked really assiduously to make this work, and the district's literally won awards for doing asset management work, but we've struggled against such things as, you know, just that the process isn't necessarily standardized. There isn't necessarily a common rule book for this, that they're exploring new territory as they do sort of small to medium-sized community asset management. And so I'm curious, to what level is this now becoming more standardized or easier for small to medium municipalities across BC and Canada, such that we're not sort of having to reinvent the wheel, and we're having a common conversation across the country to talk to the federal government and others that might invest in infrastructure?
Mr. Kinui?
I'm happy to take the question again. I think it's, again, to the same point, I think, of the previous answer. It's not something that has been standardized across Canada. You might have heard Ontario obviously has regulation specifically for asset management. So Ontario Regulation 58817 was an attempt since 2019 when it started the implementation until July of this year would be the last deadline, and waiting to see the results. There are a lot of good benefits that have come out of the regulation, but there's also, it's being criticized in some aspects. For one of them is it provided some symmetry. So when you look at the different plans now, asset management plans and strategies and policies, you see something that is looking a bit more cohesive. But at the same time, when you look at the practice behind it and the accuracy and the accessibility of the data, that's where a lot remains to be seen. And then the other issue, and I think it might come to your question here, is with municipalities, a big issue is knowledge retention and turnover. So you might run a really good program, and we have a lot of municipalities that have been really good examples, and then all of a sudden you look at them a year later and the program has run off a cliff, basically. And that's why it's very important, the ones that I've seen make it well, have taken the time to build the steps, to build the frameworks, whether it's a level of service framework, so that even when the people themselves are not there anymore, the framework is there, and you can easily still compare across departments and have a bit more robust decision making.
Thank you. Do I see any other hands? So process-wise, we take questions from council, go to the public for any comments or questions, and then come back to this table. I just have a couple of questions here. One was just sort of spurred by the departmental approach as we sort of get into some of the details. Will that include our buildings then, as well as other built assets? Just a chance? through me
Yes.
to you.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, absolutely. So the work that we're about to embark on with inventory, condition, asset data, attributes that we'd be looking to accumulate, we'd be covering all assets. But of course, with balancing resourcing and priorities, we'd be focusing in on asset systems that at the end of the day are delivering to the community, such that the levels of service conversation we're quicker to get there. And so we'll cover all asset types, but at some point it'll be risk informed. So we're not going to do an exhaustive list of assets first. We're going to be very much looking for the impact on the community and focusing on defining those systems and levels of service first.
Okay, thank you for that. And the other question I have was just, there are two questions related to risk. One is, and they're kind of conjoined, so I'll ask them both and then you can sort of answer how you see fit. Towards the end of the report, it talks about that's under section 5, council responsibilities and accountabilities, part 3, own infrastructure asset risk, and part 7, proposed levels of service and infrastructure risk levels and cost standards. And has that asset risk register and master plans as phase 2, that's this year and next year. So is that portion of that, those risk levels and so forth, they are coming back to council then? Is that essentially the intention through that planning process? Ms. LaChance?
Yes, thank you. So I think you're referring to the strategy document that lays out the components of work that's ahead of us. The frameworks are going to be developed as this next stage, so you will see that coming back to council.
Okay, and then my other question is a little more broad, I guess, related to risk, and that is combining, we're still a small community with limited resources, and there is a risk attached to trying to get everything perfect before you do the work. And so I'm just trying to get an understanding of how do we assess the risk here of spending too much time doing assessment to finely tune the priorities, as opposed to measuring those same costs that could be spent on actually replacing assets and getting in front of the break fix, which is probably our biggest threat to public safety and to costs. And so is that risk discussion coming as part of the risk analysis coming forward? Or is that a discussion we should have here tonight if that requires some guidance? Ms. LaChance?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Your Worship. I would like to start by saying that the effort and the why of what we're doing in terms of the defined project charter as we have it now, and then the work that we're going to set out to do with this refreshed strategy and policy is really with the intent to inform the community and council in a standard way across all of the assets that are delivering services, so that council can engage in a very different way on setting those service levels. The way we get there is asset, data, systems, and it seems to sound like a lot of effort, a lot of costs with where will that take us. But the foundation of having that standardization, so just even take all the buildings within the district, having a uniform way of evaluating levels of service on all of those buildings will set council up for decision making for many years to come in the future. But when we stay in the place of not having that standardized information available, governance and decision making continues to be difficult in ways. And so I would just wanted to start out by sharing some of that comment of the why we're doing this is really to empower. And I think that, yes, absolutely, this evening we can take direction. If anything you see in terms of the next steps or the work that we have set out in the order we have it, you see fit to provide us direction, there's a different approach, we can take that feedback tonight.
Thank you, Ms. LaChance. And I will say for myself, reading through it, I don't see the necessity for that, but I do think that conversation about, how are we, I guess the primary concern, as long as we're not delaying the work in the short term as we're developing the longer term plans, is a critical part of that piece. Before I go back to second time questions, I'm going to go to the public and then I'll come back to this table. Are there any questions or comments from the public? So you can just raise your hand and come forward. This is specifically to item 8.1. This is the asset management plan that we've been discussing. Yeah, you can come forward. You have to come up here and to the microphone and speak. And like all public, you can be a good demonstration here for us. Just state your name and municipality of residence.
Okay.
And then you can
I'm
address
Margaret
council.
Paul, and I live in Oak Bay. I didn't understand any of that, did you guys? Because I think it's kind of important what they were talking about, and clearly I didn't understand anything. Can you help me?
Certainly. I'll make my best cut at this. We have a community that is just under 120 years old, and many of our pipes were built in that time frame.
The
And
collapsible pipes.
so what we're seeing right now is that many of those pipes are at or near the end of their life, and we are diligently trying to get in front of the break fix that is absorbing an enormous amount of our budget. So as the pipes break, we dig it up, we replace 10 feet of pipe, and we fill it back in again at great cost with no actual net benefits. We're trying to get in front of that for going on 7 years. We've been studiously adding to the tax bill another 2 to 2.5% to make sure that we're putting money into reserves to be able to fund this and then ultimately fund that in perpetuity. But now we're at the point of how do we prioritize which pipes and when, and what are those priorities, and how do we do that in a way that has maximal planning and aligns all of our capital plans. We don't say do some road work and then 2 years later dig up the pipes to replace them or something,
I
right?
see.
We can't afford to do it twice.
Right.
So all this asset management is essentially looking at all of our assets, roads, pipes, buildings, and building a plan to make sure that we have a plan in place, we have effective, as accurate a costing as we can do, and build our financial and our capital works planning in accordance. So a lot of this conversation around risk and around asset management is really just that. It's just how do we manage our community in a way that protects its assets in perpetuity so that we don't get big nasty surprises in future.
Right. Well, that's very helpful. And I appreciated your question about, trying not to get bogged down in the administration and the assessment process so that practical things can get done.
It's a fine line, but as Ms. LaChance pointed out, it's incredibly important that we do that planning well as well. So,
Right.
and we have a whole team now who are actually running the projects. Again, important to be in front of the RFP process, the project charter management, and all those pieces. So, yes, thank you for that.
Great, thank you.
Of course. And appreciate your bravery coming forward just to ask that question. That's not it is a complicated topic that we get used to after a while. And so thank you for reminding us that we have to explain these things at a high level sometimes. Any other questions? Don't see any other members of the public online or in person, so I'll come back to the table. Councillor Patterson, you had a question for a second time?
Yes, thank you. And back to the question that was just asked, I mean, it's basically just tracking and capturing all of the inventory of everything that we have and costing it and planning for the future. So no different than we basically all do as homeowners in our home. This is just a little bit bigger than that. But I wanted to come back to your question and comment, Mayor, and that was, not getting bogged down in having to have the finalized plan because it will keep evolving. And we don't want it to delay the capital projects, nor should it, and we will have to fund whatever we're doing. But the question that arises out of that to me is, right now we do have capital projects that are in process. And so what comes to mind then is, how are we tracking and capturing what we're doing on those capital projects? And, because we'll be right at the start of them, so that's the time to really capture them and inventory them and get them costed and start capturing some of the good data that we need. So I'm just wondering, what are we doing in the interim?
Data capture? Sure. I'm not sure who I would direct that question to. How about Ms. LaChance? You can take it and redirect it if you see fit.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. That's a very astute pickup by Councillor Patterson. The intent is, of course, we'll intervene on the existing capital projects. As we near completion, we make sure that as part of the budget, which you've seen before, as well as our ongoing development of that budget in future years, we'll incorporate the ongoing impacts. You would expect to see, as we finish those capital projects, the substantiation of life cycle reserve transfers related to asset lives. Right now, Council's very focused on adjusting a level of transfer to reserve, but in the future state of maturity for the district is we'd really want that to be informed off the actual life of the assets. And so that you will see that coming forward in future budget documents, and that is part of any of our major projects going forward.
For that. I don't see other questions at this time, so I'm happy to turn to Council for some direction. We can start with the motion to receive the report. Moved and seconded. Thank you. All those in favor of receipt? Any opposed? None opposed? Thank you. And let me just seek direction from Council on other motions to move forward.
Well, Your Worship, probably want to move these one by one, so there's quite a few recommendations. I'll make the first recommendation that the following updated asset management documents be received. The Asset Management Consultants Report, which is Attachment 1, and an Asset Management Maturity Assessment, which is Attachment 2.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any discussion on that receipt of those reports? Not seeing any. All those in favor? And any opposed? Seeing none opposed, that carries.
I will move the second recommendation here, Your Worship, that the following updated asset management documents be approved. Attachments 3, 4, and 5.
Thank you. So this is asset management strategy, asset management policy, and asset management roadmap actions. Moved and, did I see a same seconder? Thank you. Any discussion? Don't see any. Just express my appreciation to the consultants and to staff for this work. Enormous amount of work to get us here. And, oh, sorry, Ms. LaChance.
I believe we have one more motion.
No, we do. I apologize. Okay. I was just making a comment on these. This is the only action portion of it. So
just trying to make sure.
Yep. No, thank you for that. I am certainly prone to making those errors, so you're welcome to always intercede. But yeah, no, I was just making the comment that incredibly complicated, and I really appreciate both the presentation, the reports, and the discussion Q&A here we had here tonight. So, all looking around, all those in favor, and any opposed? None opposed. That carries.
And Your Worship, I would make the final staff recommendation that staff in executing next steps be authorized to apply to the Asset Management Planning Grant Program and the Infrastructure Planning Grant Program for upcoming project activities, and that the district commits to providing overall grant management.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much. Good luck. And we look forward to this as it rolls out over the next couple of years as we touch base with you on intermediate steps. So thank you. We move now to item 8.2, which is the youth representative model options. We have Ms. Plouffe with us in the room here today to introduce. Welcome, Ms. Plouffe. For those who don't know, Ms. Plouffe is our Director of Corporate Services. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Murdoch. So the report before you tonight is just a report that Council asked staff to bring back on youth council representatives. We did give Council a number of options if they were considering or would like to proceed with one of those models. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have based on the report.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there questions for Ms. Plouffe or staff? Councillor Smart?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Ms. Plouffe, thank you so much for the thorough report. It was great to see all of those various options outlined so that we can make an informed decision. Couple questions. One was just with regards to looking at the different models and the benefits of camaraderie with students versus the efficiency of having one council representative at the table. I wondered, it seemed to me like there might be a benefit to, if we went with the youth representative model, appointing two students that could share the role and have that camaraderie and take turns. And I wondered, did anything like that come up in the examples that you looked at? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Murdoch, and through to council. So the feedback that we received was it's actually very difficult to even get one. I think too it'd be a little taxing to try and get. Obviously, it's council's will which way they'd like to go, but the feedback was that it's very difficult to buy into that interest. And once they have it at the beginning, it doesn't seem to stay.
Ms. Plouffe, thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Thank you. My other question is just with regards to one of the recommendations was potentially to reach out to School District 61s to coordinate, but I do recognize that there's at least 8 different high schools that Oak Bay youth attend. When you look at schools of choice, you look at private schools, and you look at Francophone school that we have in Esquimalt. So I wanted to know if staff had considered or would potentially be open to having a selection model that matched our committee and commission process, where potentially we could have a council liaison that would help with the communication with various schools, and all students from all these different schools could apply, and council could be the decision maker at the table in order to select the student in a way that would be inclusive of our Oak Bay residents that attend all of these various different high schools. Thank you.
Ms. Plouffe.
Thank you, Mayor Murdoch. That would be at council's direction.
Anything else, Councillor Smart? Any other questions for Ms. Plouffe? Not seeing any. I guess I have one just general question, and that is to your best of your knowledge, have we done a town hall or a council meeting or committee of the whole or anything like that at the high school in the past? Are you aware if we've ever tried that actual sort of approach of just being present in a school and seeing if we can drive some interest that way? Ms. Plouffe?
Thank you, Mayor Murdoch. From my knowledge, I don't know if that has happened or not. A lot of great feedback was meeting students where they're at. Seemed to be a more successful way to engage with youth. So that's why that model came before council this evening, because we did hear that frequently.
Thank you. I will turn to Councillor Braithwaite online. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Mayor. Actually, yes, in the past we have had an Oak Bay Child and Youth Committee, which happened, I think, in my first and second terms on council, and I was chair of that committee. And we did have a student group that was involved with council, and what happened with that was we had a couple of students who were very involved. They were in grade 11 and grade 12, and as soon as they graduated from high school, it was very hard to get anyone else interested. However, during the time that those 2 students were involved, we did manage to have some interaction between council and the students, and then the student committee, along with myself, would put on talks, etc., that students and parents could come to. So we have had interaction like that in the past.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. I might ask one other question that just spurred my thought on, since we don't have such a committee at the time right now. Technically there'd be no issue with us having a joint committee of the whole and Parks, Rec and Culture Committee together, like hosting an event or a discussion? Ms. Plouffe? No technical reason that couldn't happen in conjunction?
Thank you, Mayor Murdoch. I don't see an issue with that.
Okay, thank you. Back to this table. At this point, should I take a motion that we receive the report, and then we can take any other further direction? Move receipt, second. All those in favor of receipt? Any opposed? None opposed. Direction, go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Well, thank you. I would like to put forward option number 2, that council proceed with the youth representative model and that a term of reference be developed for council to approve at a later date, and that staff prepare a selection criteria model based on our committee and commission model.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder? Oh, go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Just for clarity, your worship, in terms of options, option 2, it's a little bit confusing. Option 2 has an inclusion from model option 1 or model option 3. I think we're talking about model option 1 here. Correct. Yes. Thank you.
Sorry, this is a youth council representative, not a youth council. Okay. I have that as model 1. Why do I have that as model 1? So just so I'm absolutely clear here, the youth council representative is...
Yeah, apologies. It's because it's labeled separately down below. It is the youth representative that I'm looking at that I think, I'm going to scroll up to the beginning of the report here. Youth council representative, which is number 1 in the options identified, where we would essentially have a youth sitting next to us at the council table, is the option that I'm putting forward. But it is option 2 of the options for council to put forward that I have moved.
Good, thank you. Model 1, thank you.
Model 1.
Thank you. And is there a seconder? Go ahead, Councillor. Thank you. Councillor Smart, yours to motivate.
Thank you. Really grateful to have this report in front of us today, and for Councillor Braithwaite's leadership to help move this forward. And I just wanted to speak, I guess, to the importance of having that voice at our council table. So the reason I'm supporting this motion is that I feel like it's really important that we have that perspective at our council table. I'm not concerned about the, I would like to keep it really flexible. I'm not concerned if the student is here at every single meeting, but I think as much as possible, if we can have that voice at our table, I think that our decisions will be more informed and we will be able to create greater bonds with the youth in our community. And I'm just really excited about the potential for this. I've talked to a variety of different municipalities in BC, at UBCM and at AVIC, about how successful this has been for their communities. And I believe that we can create a environment when we flush out our the potential model that we'd be looking at that can be flexible, and that we can champion as councillors around the table to bring that interest in the position.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Smart. Councillor Appleton, did you wish to speak? I have Councillor Braithwaite and then Green online as well.
Yeah, very briefly, Your Worship. Yeah, wholly in support of this. Just the intent of it, I think, is excellent, and I think we've got some really highly motivated young folks in the community that are interested in engaging, and I think it comes at a very opportune time where I think at an increasingly politically polarized time where I think young people are trending away from involving themselves or being really plugged into politics just because of the way that it carries itself across social media and in the public sphere. So I think anything we can do to offer an opportunity for youth to become immersed in the political process and give their thoughts to council, I think is an excellent one. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. I have Councillor Braithwaite, then Green, then Watson.
Thanks so much, Mayor. I totally am in agreement with engaging our students and our youth and our community as much as possible. However, I don't think that this particular option is the best option. I would really like to see us do the council-led youth engagement first, to basically test the waters and see what kind of a reaction we're going to get from the youth. I love what the staff said in the report about bringing council meetings into schools during class time to engage students in discussion. I think that would be a great opportunity for us to engage youth and demonstrate that their voices are really valued within our community. So I'm going to have to vote against this option, but if it does not pass, then I would love to put another option on the table. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. I have Councillor Green, then Watson.
Thank you very much, and I really appreciate the intent here. I brought a similar program to North Saanich about 15 years ago, and in in early days, it was very successful, but over time, it really was difficult to keep students motivated. However, it also took a great deal of staff time to coordinate. And I just wanted, my question here is, what is the capacity for staff to oversee a program like this? Because based on experience, it's quite staff intensive, certainly in the beginning. Thank you.
Ms. Plouffe, as best you can.
Thank you, Mayor Murdoch. So the report does speak to it would be a high impact on staff resources, and existing work plans would have an impact. So I would say that the resources, it would be difficult, but it is up to council's purview. We can change some work plans around.
Thank you, Ms. Plouffe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Mayor. I first want to say thank you for the very thorough report. The options are really fleshed out. It was really interesting to see different ways you could do this. I will not be supporting the motion on the floor because I think it focuses too much on one individual. And we're surrounded by students in high school, and I much prefer Model 4, the council-led youth engagement, because it reaches more of the youth community. And it opens their eyes perhaps to things that they've never thought about or care about, which is how municipal government works, what civic engagement is about. And through that may generate more youth participation in the types of things we do as a municipality when we're looking for input in all sorts of things, our cycling plans, our whatever. So I think that engagement of a larger body of youth, with the School District 61 suggesting how best that might happen and what formats or forums we could use is probably the way to go. So I'm kind of echoing Councillor Braithwaite's remarks, and I would, if this motion fails, I would be happy to move or support a motion to proceed with the council-led youth engagement approach.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I'm going to be brief because Councillor Watson has captured a lot of the same concerns that I have, and I won't support the motion on the floor. And really, with all of this, while I think the conceptually it's good, and we would welcome having youth involved. Although I would also like to add that we don't have any age restrictions really in the council chambers here, and they are welcome to come and speak on any topic they wish, so we should stress that. But I'm just really concerned with the overtaxing the resources that we have with staff. We've got so much on our plate right now, and we're still struggling a bit to get the whole public engagement framework working well for residents and for council and for staff. And so I am concerned about taxing our very limited resources even more. But if we were to select an option, I would also be looking at option 4 and engaging with a broader group of youth. So I can't support the option that's on the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll keep my comments very brief then. I'm sort of in alignment with the last few speakers. I think it's worth, if nothing else, having an initial council-led youth engagement where we at least talk to the youth in a local high school or two and seek from them how they would like to be engaged and get that answer before we go down the thing. I'm also just cognizant of the fact that from a physical space perspective, just moving with option 1 is going to be tricky, not impossible, but I think before we move down that route, we'd certainly like to hear from the youth and see how effective it is. I think it'll be well received just to go out into the schools and have that conversation. Anyway, so there we are. I can't support the motion as this. I intend to side with others that option 4 resonates with me as the next step. With that, unless there's any other discussion on the motion on the floor, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And those opposed? I have
Councillor Braithwaite opposed.
Okay, so I have Patterson, Watson, Green, Braithwaite, and myself opposed. That motion fails. Councillor Watson, you suggested that you would be willing to move option 4. Why don't you do that and see if that's got support from the table?
Find the right option to move it. Yes, so I would like to move it.
I turned it on. I would like to move that council proceed with the option 4 council-led youth engagement model and that staff work with School District 61 to determine interest in the initiative and scheduling.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Thank you. All right. I think you've already spoken to it. Do you wish to add anything, Councillor Watson?
Just, this is election night in Canada, and we want our youth to participate in democratic processes, and we want them to be interested in that. And this is one way to do that in our own community with our own youth. So, I think it's a good way to go at a time when people seem to be withdrawing from those civic opportunities and duties.
Thank you for that. I've got a thumbs up, not a not a hand up. Councillor Green, did you wish to speak?
Oh, sorry, it's a thumb. Oh, sorry. Yes, I just wanted to say I'm happy to support option 4. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Councillor Watson? Councillor Smart.
Thank you. I will support the motion because something is better than nothing, but I had wished we had gone with something that had shown sort of a greater level of respect in bringing a student to this table. I hope this isn't engaging once and thinking that we've finished our youth engagement. This is just step one of many things that we will do to engage youth in our community. And I do hope that even though this motion specifically names School District 61, that we will endeavor to be inclusive of all with at least an invitation to other high schools in the region.
Thank you very much. Don't see other hands, so I'm going to call the question. This is a motion to adopt option 4. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Plouffe, for the report. And we move now to section 9. 9.1, zoning bylaw amendment, bylaw number 4903, 2025. We have Mr. Green, our Deputy Director of Community Building and Planning, to introduce the item. Welcome.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of Council. The district has received a zoning amendment application for the property located at 2757 Dufferin Avenue. The purpose of the zoning amendment application is to rezone the subject property from residential R4 to residential R5 in order to facilitate a 2-lot subdivision. As part of the rezoning, the applicant has also requested a text amendment to the R5 zone to permit a 1 centimetre reduction to the minimum required lot width and a 2 square metre reduction to the minimum required lot area regulation of the R5 zone. This application was presented to the Advisory Planning Commission on February the 27th of this year, and the Advisory Planning Commission recommended that the application be approved. Staff believe that the application is consistent with the district's official community plan, and as such, recommending the application be approved, subject to a Section 219 covenant being registered prior to the adoption of the bylaw that would secure payment of a community amenity contribution based on the type and number of units to be developed, and requiring the submission of a development permit prior to issuance of a building permit in accordance with the OCP that requires the submission of a DP where a property is subject to a rezoning. I believe the applicant and owner are both here this evening to answer any questions that council may have, and I'm also happy to answer any questions that council may have on this application before you this evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Green. I might as well invite the applicant to come forward because if there's questions, there are likely to be a opportunity here to answer those questions. I turn to this table now, and in fact, there may not be questions. I think the application is fairly straightforward. It comes down to many ways a philosophical approach to managing these kinds of land use applications. Are there questions for the applicant at this time from any members of council or to staff? Go ahead, Councillor Appleton. I have a question if you don't. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a very minor question, and it's not actually to the applicant, but to staff. I'm just interested in the idea of, I think I might have asked this question before, but what is the granularity to survey in this case? I mean, we're talking about 10 centimeters. I mean, I'm kind of curious that we would actually be able to survey down to that level of granularity. So, is there a standard accepted practice for variance in that case?
For Your Worship, I believe BCLS land surveyor would survey down to 1 centimetre, and we do receive survey plans and as part of building permits or rezone applications or development variance permits where they measure to 1 centimetre.
Thank you. I have a question related to, I guess, the planning staff here, and that is just, we have sort of an interesting case where we have a larger lot than is in the rhythm of the street, but not so large that that it divides easily within, it doesn't divide within that zone, so it requires a rezoning. And so, just curious about, from a planning best practice, is it common, normal, recommended to change a zone sort of to accommodate subdivision in the rhythm of a street? Because it seems, if you look at zoning maps, they tend to be pretty consistent, where one area is a zone and another, and that sort of reflects the general scale and rhythm of those streets. So I'm just trying to get my head around, appreciate that's not so specific to this application, but just kind of curious about from a practice perspective.
Through your worship, I think the proposed size of the new lots will generally be consistent with a number of the lots in that area, and so we still believe that with 2 lots at that location would still be generally in the same context as both the existing context as well as any sort of future context that may take place in the future.
Thank you. And maybe I'll have one question to the applicant. And just, I think what I read in this report was that there's not specific plans yet developed for the 2 lots. So there's just, generally when we're doing these kind of specialized rezonings and so forth, we have a siting and design. In this case, we won't. We just have a covenant on there to reflect the amenity cost charges, et cetera. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Yes, we, all we're doing right now is preparing the lot for future development. The owner is here, and he's retired, and he wants to keep in reserve his ability to be agile around in these uncertain times, I guess, and so he will. So we're putting that the exact the nature of the development in abeyance until we get subdivision. But we are in pursuit of the provincial mandate to densify, and I think it's entirely appropriate because we do actually match the existing widths of adjacent properties. So this is quite. I mean, I think this is quite a standard kind of. I think that we can easily say that this is it fits into the neighborhood pattern.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Councillor Green.
Thank you very much, and through you to the applicant, thank you very much for the information. I'm just wanting to know if you have a plan to consult with adjacent neighbors or to in any way inform adjacent neighbors about the plans for this property. Thank you.
Councillor Green, there won't be any, there's no notification. We're not allowed to have any public input on this, and there's no notification beyond this.
No, I realize that, but my question is, has there been any consultation just to inform neighbors by the applicant? Thank you.
Yes, there has been. We've gone around to the neighbors, not every single one, and only those ones that were available, and they have been advised that this is in the works. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll turn to members of council at this point. Then, if there's no questions, I'll look. Well, certainly we can take a motion to receive the report that's in front of us. Moved and seconded. I think it's a second for receipt. Okay, I'll take it. I did have a question. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I wasn't quick enough off the mark there.
No, it's okay.
Yeah,
Questions are still in order.
I have
Absolutely.
a question for Assistant Director, Deputy Director Green, please. And it has to do with the Oh, sorry, Mr. Ball's here. I'm looking so hard to the right. I'm that. Whoever of you would like to answer this question. The site, as is pointed out in the staff report, is quite heavily screened by very large, I think, conifers or shrubs all the way down it's kind of on an angle, but the western, northwestern edge, and then not so much on the other end, but then there's this huge, is it a cypress? Or yes, and it sort of, it looks like it's right up against the house at the back, but it's hard to tell. So in the event, can you just explain again, in the event of subdivision, what happens to that vegetation, or is that really only on building permit that those discussions begin to happen?
Mr. Green?
Through your worship, obviously the application was referred to our Parks Department. The applicants did submit a tree management plan. The Parks Department are supportive of the removal of that Cypress leylandi hedge on that sort of northwest edge, because they believe that it is the wrong species for that particular location. So at building permit stage, the applicants would need to show a tree replacement plan to meet the tree canopy targets of the R4 zone. That will be dealt with at building permit stage through a tree permit.
Thank you.
So I hand go up in the audience. There's only the applicant can speak at this meeting. So unless you're the applicant, you can't speak at this piece. Anything else, Councillor Watson? No. Okay, thank you. So I have a motion to receive the report at this point. Took your hand up as a seconder anyway. Isn't it? All those in favor of receipt of the report, thank you. And none opposed, thank you. We now get, that was the easy part. So now move to direction from council to give some direction as to whether people wish to give first and second reading or some of the direction.
Your worship, I would move that council give first and second reading to zoning bylaw number 3531, 1986, amendment bylaw number 4903, 2025.
Moved, is there a seconder? Moved and seconded, thank you. Wish to speak?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be brief. You know, and I think this is something that we're probably going to see more and more of in the district in the years to come. I make my decision here, or I could take into consideration here, primarily the feedback that we heard from the community even before the provincial housing directives, and we talked about the and when we reached out to the community and had a very comprehensive conversation with the community about infill housing targets and how we were going to achieve infill housing. And small lot subdivision was included and referenced as an option in that infill housing strategy. And there was a fairly significant degree of support for small lot subdivisions, creating the sort of gentle infill density that people were looking for. So I'm taking the subdivision on its own merits here and referring to, you know, I think it would be somewhat of a different story if we were creating lots that were completely undersized for the neighborhood or stood in contrast with a lot of the other lots in the neighborhood. So I think that this is a reasonable ask for this location, not putting it out of rhythm with the rest of the street. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. Other speakers? So that's our hand up. Go ahead, Councillor Watson.
I am really struggling with this application based on and having to make a decision on it in isolation of having discussion around basically the same request for 3223 Henderson Road. I see them as very similar and present the same issues to the community at a time when we don't yet have our OCP in place. And we know we're about to go out to the public with 3 different models for development for our community and asking the public what their views of what those should be. We don't have that yet. But each of those are looking for the public's view on where we should concentrate our development to meet our 20-year housing targets. And in the meantime, we're stuck with this really awkward thing of having to deal with on a 1-by-1-by-1-by-1 basis individual requests, which can lead in every case that a lot exists, regardless whether it's R1 through R5, a total of 4 housing units on the lot. So that the consequences of that long term, we might actually notice that in the landscape 5, 10, 15 years from now, because we pick a different direction once we have an official community plan than allowing ongoing, like with an official community plan that actually shows the intention more broadly, the development industry gets a clearer signal about where to invest their money that's in line with community values. And so these two applications before us tonight are it's sort of cart before the horse. And I know every municipality in BC is I am sure struggling with this right now. But we've already seen some consequences of that are quite legitimately impacting residents in our community, and in my view, getting to a point where you can argue that the very features that we value are being undermined by these short-term decisions. And so I really struggle with this. I think that the length of time between now and December 31st, when we have to have our new plan, is really not that long. And personally now, although I am fully in support of more housing and more housing options in Oak Bay, I think there's another set of really important values in the one of them being beauty in our neighborhoods, which we may lose in little pockets, which would be sad to see. So until you actually call the vote on this, I'm not quite sure what I want to do, but I am really struggling with a lot of one-off decisions that have the potential in each case. In this case, this rezoning could lead to 8 units in that space, and I'm not sure that's where we want to go at this point in time. It's almost the 1st of May, and in 7 months, we have to have our strategy in place. So anyway, that's all I'm going to say at the moment.
Thank you very much, Councillor Watson. I have Councillor Braithwaite online.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I actually agree with Councillor Watson. I struggle with this as well, and with the next one, because I would really like to see where we're going to be at after our official community plan. So I am in the same boat as Councillor Watson right now. Thank you.
Question marks all around. Councillor Smart. Patterson.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to speak in favor of the motion on the table. I also struggled looking at this application with some of the very reasons that have been brought forth. And the reason I'm supporting it is because in this particular case, the small lot that is created is a lot that is in keeping with the scale and grain of the neighborhood. And so for these 2 lots potentially to be developed with 8 units would not inherently be different than the fact that 8 units could be created on 2 lots right next to them. And so in that sense, I feel like it's not over-densifying in this particular neighborhood, these 2 new lots that are created any more than potentially the 2 lots across the street. So that is how I landed on my support for this particular one. But I agree, I think we all want to be at the stage where we have had that OCP already.
Councillor Patterson, and then Green.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And it is certainly at the APC, much of the discussion was the same as it has been at the council table, because they were very uncomfortable with the uncertainty of what the future held with the subdivision of these lots, and concern about our existing housing inventory being demolished to accommodate an unknown, basically, at this point in time. Their rationale was that the subdivision as presented did align with the size of other lots that are certainly within that area, and that's how they arrived at the decision. And it would be better if we had our OCP already finished and had greater certainty, but it's difficult to reject it just on that basis also. So I guess this is in the state that we are in now. The request of the applicant is a valid request, and it could support opportunities for housing for the community. They could be negative, they could also be positive. And so with that opportunity, I will support it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Green. just need to unmute. I think you're trying. Yeah, we can't hear you. You're still muted on your end. Sometimes if you just shrink the window and open and resize it again, there you are.
I've got it.
Okay.
Sorry, I've got it. Thank you very much. Sorry about that. Thank you for your patience. I would have to agree with the comments of my colleagues, Councillor Watson and Councillor Braithwaite. I appreciate that this is not a huge difference for the street, but I do agree that we haven't had the consultation with the community that we have promised for the official community plan process. And I think it's really important to hear from them. And the fact that the advisory planning committee or commission had concerns also is something I pay attention to. So at this time, I will not support the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. It's an interesting conversation here. I think, you know, I struggle with this one as well. I'll share that. You know, rationally, if this application came to us 2 years ago and asked for the subdivision, I would have supported it. And this is, I think, one of the interesting and unexpected side effects of the provincial Bill 44 is that it actually, instead of being a reasonable additional density, we're asking for, you know, a simple subdivision now becomes a 1:8 ratio change in a neighborhood, which is a really substantive change. We do have the option usually in these situations of these things coming forward with plans, so we can consider them in the context of their impact and design. And that is sort of our right within that piece. But in this case, that the ask has not been to do that. It's been to come at it with just a right to, you know, abide by the rules, which are there for everybody. And so I struggle with this one a little bit. I think the rationale of this is it probably makes sense to allow for subdivision. It's not an unreasonable subdivision, although smaller than allowed, and within a step down of the zoning as well. You know, and I guess where I'm struggling with this a little bit is if we want 4-unit houses, and I think we went through this in the detailed design aspects as we were going through trying to find zoning that allowed for reasonable 4-plex units. We know that they don't work as well on the smaller lots. We know that the slightly larger lots, especially ones like this that have a laneway access, can provide, you know, functional parking and green space and things, and it's much harder on smaller lots to make all of that work. So, you know, I'm torn here as well in that I certainly don't have any issue with the 4 units on the lot, but is it the appropriate piece here to do it? So I'm actually really struggling with this one. I don't know exactly what the right answer is on it. I think I'd probably, with a bit more clarity of what was being built, have a much easier time. And if we didn't have the prospect of 8 units on it with limited green space, I would be more supportive of it. So I am struggling here. I'm not going to lie about supporting the zoning changes. So there we go. That's kind of where I'm at, sitting on the fence, which I'm not allowed to do. So I have to vote one way or the other at the end of the day. I'm going to just actually, just as a courtesy here, because I think we're hearing a little bit of a tight split here on council to the applicant. If you just wanted to, if there's anything here listening to the comments made around the table, is there anything else you wish to add to the application?
Yes, there is. I think that the notion of actually implementing an 8-unit development here is not really even practical. What you'd be left with, I mean, you are restricted in a very restrictive way as for coverage. I mean, coverage, you're still at 30%. How do you get 8 units in 30% coverage? That's hardly even contemplatable. I mean, you would have 1,500 square foot units. You would have a 600 square foot unit, 600 square foot footprint for each of these units. It's not even. It's kind of almost laughable that you could even do that. So what we're left with is what is practical. What is practical is basically either a single-family dwelling with a with an adaptable unit or with a accessory dwelling unit, which is a unit which resides over top of or beside a garage, and you get and a principal dwelling unit. So, and that is definitely, and the and the principal dwelling unit would have to, with the 40% FAR, would only be on 2 stories. So the effect of this subdivision is to give us a principal unit and a adaptive accessory dwelling unit. Or you can have a principal unit by itself with a secondary suite, right? And so that, I mean, that is the practical result of being able to do this. I mean, I think that is our main options anyway. So I think all along in the we have had preliminary development of these schemes, but that's the result of our analysis that two dwelling units on this lot is probably something that is not only acceptable to the community, which we always have in mind, but it's also practical. I mean, it's doable as far as floor area ratio and coverage is concerned. So, I mean, the notion of extreme densification of what you're suggesting is just not practical. I mean, you would have tiny footprints, 600 square foot footprints for 4 houses, and that's, I mean, by the way, we have to have a development permit for these things, right? So this development would have to be scrutinized by staff and council. So it's not as if it's a free pass.
Thank you, Mr. Yamamoto. I'm just, for my clarification, and I think for the record, there's certainly been some 4-unit buildings built onto sub 6,000 square foot lots already, starting in this community, so it's definitely not a non-starter. So appreciate that the current owner may not wish to do that, but that is certainly being done. Mr. Green, just from a process perspective, my understanding of reading the report is there is no touch point beyond this, as long as any development fits within the zoning for the new lot. So once the zoning changes would be made here, it would be essentially the end of the council touch from a development permit perspective. There's no siting and design attached to it if it stays within the zoning.
No, so as this lots are being created through a rezoning application, the district's OCP requires infill projects to go through a development permit process, and so that development permit will be submitted. It will go to the advisory design panel for their review and comment, and then would go to council.
Thank you for that clarification. Thank you. I have a hand up from Councillor Braithwaite.
Thanks, Mayor. I was actually just going to kind of say something similar to what you said. I mean, I appreciate the comments from the speaker, but oftentimes practicality does not come into play when someone purchases a lot and knows that they can build 4 units. I myself live in a very small house, which is only 830 square feet, so I know it can be done. And I know that there would be a market out there for smaller houses or smaller units. So even though they say that, practically it's probably not, practical to build something that size, I think you're correct in that it has been done in our community. And so that's still where my mind is going. And so I still will be wanting to wait until the OCP is finished before I make decisions on lots like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. We've had a couple of people who are humming and hawing here, including myself. So is there any other people who wish to speak before we get to the calling the question? Nope, I'm not seeing any other hands poking up. So I will prepare to call the question. All those in favor and those opposed. I have Councillor Watson
opposed.
And Braithwaite opposed. That carries. So first and second reading is complete. Councillor Applicant, whatever, should move this third reading.
Yes, Your Worship, so I would move, sorry, I want to make sure I get the right one. The council give third reading to zoning bylaw number 3531, 1986, amendment bylaw number 4903, 2025.
Okay, thank you. Moved and seconded. Take the same mover and seconder. We don't usually debate on third reading, so I'm going to call the question.
Excuse me, Mayor, I'm sorry, my vote was incorrect.
Okay,
I was
my
voting
apologies.
against the application. I'm sorry.
Okay, so let the record reflect that. Thank you, Councillor Green. That still carries, so we move to third reading here for zoning bylaw 3531. All those in favor? And those opposed, I have Councillor Watson, Braithwaite, and Green opposed. And then we have a recommendation here that council authorize mayor and corporate officer to sign and register a covenant under section 219 of the Land Title Act, registered as a charge against title to all land in the proposed R5 zone that secures all of the following and lists out there.
I move that recommendation, Your Worship.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. This is probably less contentious. But seeing, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Don't see any opposed. That carries. So that will move forward then for work. And I think at the completion of all those pieces, it'll come back for adoption. Is that my understanding? Okay, thank you. All right, we move to number 9.2, zoning and bylaw amendment, zone 00057 for 3223 Henderson Road. Mr. Green, I think you're on the deck again.
Thank you, Your Worship. The district has received a zoning amendment application for the property located at 3223 Henderson Road. The purpose of the zoning amendment application is to rezone the subject property from the residential R4 to the residential R5 in order to facilitate a two-lot subdivision. The application was presented to the Advisory Planning Commission on March 19th, 2025, and the Advisory Planning Commission recommended the application be approved. Staff believe the application is consistent with the district's official community plan, and as such, staff have recommended the application be approved, subject to a Section 219 covenant being registered prior to the adoption of the bylaw that would secure payment of a community amenity contribution based on the type and number of units, and requiring the submission of a development permit prior to issuance of a building permit. In accordance with the OCP, that requires the submission of a development permit where the property is subject to a rezoning. The applicant and owner are both here to answer any questions that council may have, and I'm also happy to answer any questions that council may have on this application.
Thank you very much. Welcome, sir, and we will turn to members of council if there's any questions to the applicant. I think we probably will have some questions, but I will happy to start. There's certainly concerns raised here in terms of what's going to happen on the second lot in terms of blasting and impacts on housing surrounding. So if you can maybe just talk to us a little bit about what the plans and the intentions on that, and we understand the intention is to maintain the existing house, and so also the impact on the existing house.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Carl Peterson, and I represent the owner, Mike Parker, who's also in attendance this evening. We're a little different from the previous application in that the whole purpose of this application is for the current owner to be able to stay in the house that he's lived in for over 30 years and where he's raised his family. He's land rich and cash poor, and hence the application. I'd like to make a couple of comments and then field questions. As stated in the staff report, the application aligns with the policy objectives in the OCP, supporting gentle densification of existing neighborhoods. It also received unanimous support from the Advisory Planning Commission last month. Prior to submitting his application to the municipality, Mike talked with each of his surrounding neighbors about his intention to subdivide the property, including the now deceased brother of the fellow who accidentally mentioned this project in his comments. And he received no objections or concerns from anyone he spoke with, and one neighbor across the street even offered some assistance. The proposed subdivision would have no visual impact from Henderson Road. And the proposed lot B, that would be for future development, has a lot width wider than would be required, and the issue for area is lot depth. It should be noted that the existing lot is roughly 15,400 square feet, which exceeds the current RS4 minimum by 50%. And the resulting subdivision, it would be only 10% smaller, but still have the same visual appearance from the street. I think the staff report was quite clear, so I'll stop and just field questions anybody has. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Just maybe if you could just speak to the impacts of it's quite a rocky space there. Just if you could talk a little bit to what you see having surveyed. So you don't have all the geotechnical, I'm sure, at this point, but just your thoughts on the impact of being able to build a house on that site on such a rocky slope.
From my own experience, the first house I built in Victoria was about 1976. And the first thing we had to do to get to where we could build the house was take away a boulder the size of the area here. And we had no money, but we made it work. And didn't damage anything. The whole rock issue is a completely separate thing to be addressed in how you deal with blasting. I think the industry has moved away from a few holes with big charges to many holes with small charges, and there are many ways to control what happens there. But the primary location of the rock is on the east side, and of course there would be some kind of rock blasting that would happen in there, and I can't offer any specifics about that. And as far as what would be designed there, as it was mentioned previously, anything that is done there has to be done through the development permit process and would come after design panel would come to this body to look at in detail.
For that, sorry, and I'll go to other members of council who may have some questions. I don't see questions, so in which case I will take a motion to receive the report. Moved and seconded. All those in favor of receipt?
Sorry, Mayor.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, I'm having trouble with my with my app here. Yeah, I just did have a question for, I think it probably has to go to staff, but I know we did get a couple of letters on this, and in one of the letters it talked about a restrictive covenant on form and scope. And I'm wondering if that's a possibility on the new, if this went through on the new lot, a restrictive covenant on form and scope. Thank you.
I think from staff's perspective, they would answer, is it possible? And then to the applicant, if it's of interest, I guess is probably the two halves of that question. Staff is, can we require a restrictive covenant on for form and scope? Go ahead, Mr. Green.
Through your worship, it would depend on the scope or the terms of that covenant was seeking by council. Obviously, we still believe that if council wished to see a covenant to, for example, limit height or density, then we still, and the applicant would be open to that covenant, so it's essentially a voluntary covenant, then we believe that that is still legal for the district to choose. But it ultimately would depend on what the scope or the intent of that covenant is trying to do.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. Did you wish more clarification?
I think I'm good, thank you.
No other questions there? Sorry, and I'll turn around to this table again. I'll see questions, but I'm happy to take a motion in that case, and we can speak to a motion. Anybody wish to advance something? I don't typically make motions. I usually rely on council. I just need something on the floor to speak to. Anybody online wish to make a motion? Councillor Appleton, you're welcome to go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. It's not listed specifically here as a recommendation, but I guess I would take a procedural note from you. I would guess that, that right now there's recommendations to give first and second reading. If we were going to specifically, my inclination would be to not move forward with first and second reading. So would we require a motion to indicate that we were not going to go forward with first and second reading, or would we just leave it at the fact that there was no motion for first and second reading?
No, the motion would be to the zoning amendment application for the property be denied.
So, for the purposes of discussion, Your Worship, I would make that motion that the zoning bylaw number 3531.
It would actually just be the zoning amendment application, ZON 0057, for the property located at 3223 Henderson Road be denied would be the appropriate language.
So moved, Your Worship.
All right. Thank you. We can speak to that if there's a seconder. Seconded, thank you. Yeah, for discussion, please go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I appreciate your guidance on this. I actually take a fairly different view of this subdivision as compared to the previous subdivision, and I approach it slightly differently. I think, and I recognize the concerns that are being raised by neighbors as far as the redevelopment of the lot and what form and character that takes. And with respect to my colleagues and folks from the community raising the issue of the OCP update. I take all those things together and I look at a lot of this type and interpret that sort of larger lots of this nature, just over 15,000 square feet on a corner in an established neighborhood, could very well be the types of lots that would be selected or could be included in the upcoming OCP's zoning review as the types of lots that could be suitable for a potential middle-sized housing form, a townhouse or a row house or something of that nature that would allow for a gentle infill or a diversity of housing forms in an established neighborhood. That doesn't work very well on many lots. It doesn't work on lots in the middle of a block, for instance, or lots with poor access. This is a corner lot with a different degree of access and, like I say, is larger. I think the argument about potential disruption of the site for the purposes of blasting for redevelopment is a reasonable one. I take the view that if in the upcoming OCP such a lot were to be considered for a potentially denser housing form, if the blasting was seen as absolutely necessary to redevelop on the lot, that if the blasting were to occur, that I would like to see us potentially consider that in the context of a different housing form and not exclusively a single residential building. So I take a bit of a different view here, Your Worship. My colleagues may think otherwise, but I do see this in the longer term OCP review with the idea that these types of lots may be suitable for a different type of redevelopment that the community has not yet discussed. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. Go ahead, Councillor Watson.
It's interesting to hear. I've heard Councillor Appleton express that perspective too in relation to lots in the Uplands, and although we've had different reasons for voting the same way, in this case, again, my part of my thinking about not supporting this at the moment is because it's another 1-to-8 ratio situation in a neighborhood which is. At the moment, at least, absent, a higher level strategic direction through the OCP, is used to seeing these more generous lots with the associated landscaping, exposed rock, and the other things that make that North Henderson area or that Henderson neighborhood distinct as a neighborhood in Oak Bay. So, I think again that right now, with only 7 months to go, it's better to hold off. And it may be that the direction of the OCP OCP, it's one of the areas that we talked about asking the consultants to look at very specifically was corner lots with these attributes. So I think it's better to be cautious here and not approve this at the moment because we may want to take a different direction. More broadly, and it could be the one that Councillor Appleton's alluding to, or it could be a different one entirely. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Others? Councillor Smart, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. This is a really challenging one, and I think particularly because this lot is of such a similar size to so many in this neighborhood, and so to make a decision of a subdivision on this particular lot, you know, really could be a almost transformative gesture towards implying that the whole grain of this neighborhood could change in the same manner. And I think that what we've been hearing from a council today is just, of course, a desire for that conversation to happen in the community. I do struggle, though, with this decision and remain undecided at this very moment because there are so many great aspects about this site, and I do imagine that it may very well, being a corner lot, be identified in the OCP as has been pointed out as an excellent opportunity for this type of subdivision, or perhaps more ideally redevelopment with a more creative solution. I just want to point out the positive aspects of this application, the aging in place, and just to address the need to support our community with those desires. The corner lot, which would reduce the impact of access to this site on two different streets. It is in line with our infill housing guidelines. The APC did support this particular ask, and because our implementation of the housing directives at this table generally keeps the allowable building form and footprint to not significantly but be divergent from a single family house design, that we did a light touch with the housing directive implementation, that also would give me confidence that we wouldn't look back on this decision you know, and potentially see this as not fitting into the neighborhood. So quite torn at this moment, leaning slightly towards rejecting it based on that it would change the grain of the neighborhood at just at this one moment.
Councillor Patterson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and I support the motion, but not for the same reason that it was put forward. And the reason is that this one is different than the last application we looked at. The topography of the site is very different, and the housing within this neighborhood, the existing lot does fit the context of all of the adjacent lots. The subdivision proposed would change that, and it without the guidance of the OCP in place yet, we don't know what the context of that will be. I certainly respect certain attributes of what has been presented. There's the benefit of retaining the existing housing stock that is being proposed. So while there's benefits to it, it's a more challenging lot because of the topography, the services and how they would have to be run, and just the nature of changing that. So I think in this circumstance, it would be better to have the guidance of the OCP, which is not, it's a few months off. It's not that distant from the application. And I think at that time we will have a better framework for just assessing how the planning for the neighborhood will unfold. So until that takes place, I will support the motion to deny, but not for the reason that the person that moved the motion gave. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Anybody else wishing to speak to the motion? I'm going to call the question then. All those in favor, the motion in front of us is at this point to deny the application at this time for subdivision, or not for the rezoning. All those in favor? And those opposed? So I have Councillor Green opposed to the denial. Everyone else is in favor. That carries, which is sort of always motions of the negative are always confusing to me. That does not, so the application does not proceed past this point with that decision. Mr. Peterson, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
We move to item number 9.3, which is a very less complicated. Which is just a adoption of our anti-noise bylaw.
Your Worship, I would move that anti-noise bylaw number 3210, 1977 amendment bylaw number 4902, 2025 be adopted.
Moved. Is there a seconder? Seconded. Any discussion on adoption? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. We move back to complicated ones. We have two more complicated than that. Three items, actually a number of items in section 10, which are all subject to public input. Process as before, all of these items. We'll introduce the item. We'll have questions from council. We'll allow members of the public to speak. We will come back to this table for debate and motions and move forward from there. So up first, 10.1, upland setting and design for 3609 Cadboro Road. Mr. Green, I think you're on. You are not Mr. McStravick, who I take it is not here.
Thank you, Your Worship. The district has received a upland siting and design application and a development variance permit for the property located at 3609 Cadboro Road. The purpose of the applications are to allow for the construction of 2 new accessory dwelling units on the Beach Drive side of the property. The requested variance is to increase the height of the ADUs from 2 to 3 stories. The application was presented to the advisory design panel on April the 8th of this year, and the ADP recommended that the application be approved. There was also notice was mailed out to all properties and residences within 50 metres of the subject property as per the Development Applications Procedures Bylaw, and correspondence received on the application has been added to the council agenda. The applicant and the project architect are both here to answer any questions that council may have on the applications.
Thank you very much, Mr. Green. You might as well come forward to answer any questions. I think there may be a couple. There were certainly a few at the design panel. Is there any, go to this table. Questions, please. Councillor Watson, please begin.
Yes, thank you. I have a question for the applicant, if I could. And it's I'll just wait till they're settled in there. Get their drawings out. Yes, I have a question about the approach to the 2 garages that will be the integral garages for the 2 homes, and what the distance is from the property line to that point. Right now, there's an old stone wall that's kind of falling, it's not really holding the bank. It's holding it a bit, but, not that successfully. So what will that overall thing look like when you have the 2 houses in place with their separate driveways?
Thank you very much for your question. The property currently has 36 feet from the property line to the street, and then the setback is 5 feet from the property line to the building. So it's a total of 40 feet from the house to the street.
Thank you. That's my only question.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Other questions from members of council? Looking online, Councillor Braithwaite, if you wish to ask any questions, just unmute yourself and go ahead. I don't see any. I'm going to just ask a couple of quick questions here. My understanding of this is these are treated as accessory dwelling units, as new units on a lot. We had, I think, the primary building in for approval of for some renovations recently and some modifications. just for I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm just going to ask it anyway. What is the oversight of these buildings onto the neighbors in terms of like what rooms are looking onto neighbors' backyards? Though I appreciate this pushed at the rearmost portion of the lot, there's still some overlook there. Perhaps you could just address what's being done to mitigate the overlook on the neighbors.
We have actually put forward a substantial planting on the boulevard, so it actually goes from the house out to the boulevard. There is in the rendering, if you see that, we could pull it up if you'd like to have a look there. We're showing some not mature trees that are planted in front. Like I mentioned, there's 40 feet from the house to the road.
I'm thinking more of the buildings on either side, not across the road.
Okay. The side right now, as the bylaw reads, you're allowed 5-foot setbacks. If you look at the buildings from the side, there is 1.5 story visible overlook, and there's a 15-foot setback on one side and a 16-foot setback. So those are 10 feet more than the bylaw requires. In between the buildings is actually 26 feet, which is only minimum requirement in the bylaw is 10 feet. So we really did a lot of effort to try and create as much spacing. The impact from the neighbors is very limited because they're basically, the houses are buried in the bank. From the Cadboro Bay side of the property, there's only 9 feet of the building exposed above grade, which is completely covered with existing landscape all the way along the whole back of the property. So there's zero impact anywhere because you can't literally see them. I'm the neighbor, which is overlooking these, and I won't even be able to see the houses from my property, which is the one that I'm talking about, the existing house that we're retaining.
Thank you. And my only other question then is just, as was noted, there is a certain rhythm to that stretch of road where there's a rock wall and some old garages that sometimes pierce that wall or carports. And I'm just, I appreciate the inclusion of the rendering here from the Beach Drive side. It looks like some of that there is some of that rock wall sort of there continuing in from each of the neighbors' piece of that. Can you just perhaps speak to that design element of continuing that wall along there?
The intent of the wall is to actually leave it where it connects off to the neighbors. If you continue down Beach, we're actually the last house and the road turns up Midland. So on the Midland side, there is garages at 0 lot line. And even on the Beach Drive side, the immediate neighbor has a garage at 0 lot line. So there is some pattern repetition there. We'll be set back, of course, the 5 feet as the bylaw states. And the wall will continue onto at the same spot and carry onto the property, actually only exposing about half of the lower floor. So the variance that's actually in front of council today is really not a 3rd story variance, it's the main floor variance. The goal being to park the cars inside the building as opposed to beside the building. If we were to go for a variance with exactly the same, if we were to go with no variance, with exactly the same proposal, basically you would just see the same houses, same massing, everything would be identical. All you would have is cars parked in between the houses and on the south side. It would amount to about 1,200 square feet of extra planting, or the loss of about 1,200 square feet of planting, as well as the loss of accessibility for both the houses. As you can see, these houses that are planned have elevator options in both of them. We believe this kind of housing is going to be a great age in place or actual downsize option for other people in the neighborhood. So we fear accessibility in elevators was important, and we've included them.
Thank you very much for your answers. Are there other questions from members of council? Councillor Appleton, and seeing no other hands, I'll go to the public after this. Go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to the applicant. Thank you for the rendering is very useful, and thank you for including that. To what extent, I know the site pretty well, go by there on a regular basis, to what extent are they notched into the bank? Like, essentially, what do you need to do for excavation? What do you need to do for blasting? How far do you need to go back into that bank in order to make the design work?
Thank you for the question. So I did make some notes on that. If you look along that bank, the reason the retaining wall is there is because it's actually supporting fill. So we're not proposing to go below the boulevard. We're actually going flat with the boulevard. So back in the day when the house was built further up on the bank, they actually built the wall to actually put the fill in. So there is fill behind it. There will be some work sculpting the bank in order to fit the houses in, and there's going to be some blasting. And we've looked at the new proposed blasting bylaw, and we are intending on meeting the expectations and the design of the new bylaw that Oak Bay is proposing right now. So low impact blasting, and we really, we don't know exactly the extent of it, of course, until we excavate. But as you can see along there, all the boulevards are flat and the walls are actually retaining soil.
Thank you for that. I'm going to go to the members of the public now, or people who wish to speak to us on the proposed DVP at 3609 Cadboro Bay Road. Welcome to come forward. Probably for convenience sake, I'll maybe just have you sit there at the side and let the applicants stay where they are. It's okay, you can stay there, Mr. Cole. Please come forward. Yes, thank you, Mr. Green, if you could just pass your microphone over. So if you're here at the beginning, you saw the process, name, municipality, push the button, and you're welcome to speak to council.
My name is Peter Ribeiro. I currently reside at 3525 Beach Drive, of course, in the Uplands, about 3 houses down from the subject property. I'm also a member of the Uplands Neighborhood Association. I've had some feedback from some of the neighbors that, in their opinion, last week when we received our mail out, dated April 15th, but received by mail April 22nd, and therefore consummating this meeting here today, seemed like it was a bit of a very fast push through. We did see the notification on the boulevard that for the past 6 or 8 months appeared to be a planning permit process for the rest of the main house for renovation, so no one really took a real sight to it. The variation process, we are in the opinion that you actually would have a variance sign erected at both the front and the back. Of course, the back side of this property is Beach Drive, which is really unusual when you actually look for a variance. Most people think the front of the yard, what happens to be the back of the yard, nobody really sees it. So I'll give you a bit of background here. What I will say is I've actually solicited and had people approach me. There's a bit of petition going on there. Out of the 19 homes on Beach Drive, on both sides, on either side of it, the direct 19 homes, which essentially goes from Cadboro Bay Road to Ripon Road, I guess constituting one large block, nothing broken in between there. Of the 19 homes, 16 of the neighbors there emphatically say no. 3 of the neighbors have been apparently away for about a week or so. So we tried to best of our abilities from Friday, Saturday, Sunday to get through to them, notify of what this variation is all about and the actual impact on Beach Drive. And 2 of the other ones were a bit further on, just the corner of Beach Drive, and the other one further closer to Ripon Road. So just to give you a bit of mindset of that. Over and above that, unlike many other variances in neighborhood OCPs and densifications, we're on Beach Drive. This is like a park-like setting. Of course, it's a National Historic Park, recognized it, not a park, but National Historic Site. Trafficked by many, utilized by many, and therefore looking at the variance under the UN, the UMBC, I see that you have privilege to not just have your neighbors to the left and right hand side, but those who have a vested interest or use of the area, which Beach Drive, which you know is a real vested corridor. It didn't take long for our online petition and notification, more so than anything else. You can choose whichever you want to go. As of this morning, actually, the 51 names is now updated to 65. Again, I apologize. We only had 3 days to put this together. The Uplands Neighborhood Association just sent out the circular 10 o'clock last night to all of its members. Emphatically, we haven't found one that has gone with it, but I'll give you a bit of background here. First of all, once again, I really appreciate the fact of this process. I understand from our last meeting with Uplands Neighborhood Association, Honorable Mayor Worship, Mayor Murdoch noted the fact that under Bill 44, the densification is not a process that neighbors get visibility to. There is no, that's being wiped off the table by the province, but of course the variance actually allows us to see what's actually gone on here. So we had to quickly come up to speed there. We also want to, as a notation, And I apologize we didn't get a chance. The mayor had to leave somewhat early last time. In Oak Bay, I must say, we're actually proud of our mayor and council that you've been under so much pressure, yourself and West Van, of defending the most expensive dirt, as Adam Sterling calls it, on Vancouver Island, and of course West Van in their municipality. This whole Bill 44, as we all know, trying to get the end result of affordable housing, which everybody wants, more inventory of affordable housing, makes it very difficult when you first start with the most expensive real estate, and then of course new builds being much more of multiple, especially in the past 3 years since COVID, to try and achieve that final result. So we've seen that people have used that guise and the opening of the door, even though the OCP has not been officially ratified at this point, which makes it kind of scary, that allows investors, developers to be able to go under that shield and do what normally would have never happened in the Uplands due to its lifelong covenant. A bit of background, my father-in-law, who bought the property in 2019, sadly passed away about a year and a half ago. Lifelong dream was to reside in a place like this. Beautiful fauna, trees, park-like settings. You can't, it's nationally known. We all know that and heavily visited. Every bit of the walk along the boulevards, meeting neighbors, seeing the green belt there. In many of the backyards of these properties, including the subject backyard, is just solid greenery. You probably saw from the pictures that we submitted on our 11-page document there to give the council a bit of an idea of what you see right now if you haven't frequented that. Then, of course, shows what you will be seeing. I kind of set aside that, or taken aside, but that the subject property developer says that have no impact. The three neighbors directly across the street, and I'm not one of them, emphatically, they're looking at it. They studied every one of the pages there. They're looking with the elevation of the hill, more so, and being at the frontage where it is, now non-encumbered by the current ripping down the trees there, and for future ones that take quite a bit to kind of grow, are looking directly to their homes. One of which has a BC assessment value of $12 million. He thinks he pays good enough property taxes that when he bought the home and he had the covenant on the home from the Uplands, he felt pretty confident that nothing would actually take away from the value of his home at the very front of the house there. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it today. He was in Yubu over the weekend. Again, what I've done on the 11-page, and I won't go through it because I sent it by the deadline there, I did highlight the neighbors on the handwritten petition as well as the online that actually are within the boundaries of the beach drive. I did not look at Cadboro Bay whatsoever because I think the council knows the Cadboro Bay residents will have no visibility, zero visibility of what's going on here in, quote unquote, the backyard of this house that's on there. The real concerns what you have there, and I've seen it, I know the members of the Uplands Neighborhood Association as well as neighbors who live there have directly been opposed to the densification of the area itself. Not so much the fact that it's their NIMBY type of attitude and such like that. It doesn't really give visibility. Everyone knows the beach drive is the only real thoroughfare through the Uplands. It's unabated by any stop signs, traffic lights, what have you. And on the weekend does become a raceway. Of course, on a tourist end of things, they actually use it as a bike and jogging raceway. So we've been encumbered for the past year and a half with massive construction, and we see how it bottlenecks this one particular street with no bike lanes, no real roadside parking on the side there. We can only imagine with construction somewhere like this for the 18 months to 2 years, its effect, because really what we see right now is everything from the contractors to the machinery to the workers, where they could park when they go on this process here. It'll have a huge effect on it. What we've learned from across the border is that higher governments have seemed to gone far-reaching. They seem to kind of overstep the boundaries, in my opinion, of the municipality where we have great guidelines. We keep the fabric of this community in a certain way. We're not opposed to change. It's change management. The whole idea behind it is change it with the right focus and direction versus at times the provincial government with a one-size-fits-all. I'll give you an anecdotal example.
Mr. Barrell, we don't have technical limits on speaking here.
Oh,
But
sorry.
I just want to, we're at 9:39 and for 10 o'clock finish to this meeting, and I do want to kind of get there. So if you just ask you to
So basically,
be concise.
Yeah, I'll get right to the end of it there. The neighbors in that area itself, they disagree with the plan of the fact that it'll have no real impact. For when you saw variance, it actually will take away from the fabric of this community. It doesn't fit in with the current fabric as you drive down Beach Drive. It has unsightly visibility and privacy issues to the neighbors across the street. And people who visit the area itself are trying to protect it. And what we basically said, as a council, we believe you have a fiduciary responsibility to preserve this more of a park-like setting, as well as have the reservation of, I don't know how far the ADUs have gone through, but for the third story, it just makes matters worse and makes it more unaffordable for an end goal that's supposed to be an affordability issue in the area itself. So with that, again, we submitted the reports there, which would have been the voices of 16 people that live in that area, and more so. So I think I've kind of, somewhat condensed the time to have them all speak here. I hope you read the report. And if you have any other further questions, I'd be more than happy to kind of give you my visibility on it.
Thank you, Mr. Barrow. We do have the full letter and petition and all the other pieces here in our.
What I'll leave with
package,
the,
so-
what I'll leave, since yesterday, there's been another 25 more names in the petition, including one neighbor that lives on Beach Drive in the area itself, so I'll leave that.
Sure, you can
for
leave with the
file.
corporate officer on
Absolutely.
this side here if you wish. I'll extend the invitation for any other speakers who wish to come forward to speak to this application. I'll look online as well if there's anybody online who wishes to speak. This is for the Upland Siting and Design and Development Variance Permit for 3609 Cadboro Bay Road, but as the last speaker spoke to, it is primarily on the ADUs facing Beach Drive. Don't see any other hands, so I'm going to come back to this table. I have one hand up. Councillor Green, do you have a question or a comment?
Yes, thank you. Just a question through you, Mayor, to the applicant, and thank you very much for the report and all the information. Are the units going to be rented then? Are they rental units? Thank you.
Mr. Cole?
Hello, and thank you for the question. Through you, Mayor. No, the intent at a later date, I would be coming back and doing a building strata because of the fact that the existing that I chose, and this was guided by council's interest in retention of homes. The whole site had been designed with this stuff in mind. I was involved at the early stages of meetings at council and with staff and working on the bylaw changes, but the idea would be that we'd come back to council and request to get a stratification, which would allow these homes to be sold individually.
Councillor Green?
Yes, just a supplementary question then. I think I'm a little confused then. Why are they referred to as an ADU? And I believe that's the terminology used in the report, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, accessory dwelling units. I guess I've made the wrong assumption that most of these are designed to be rented or rentable rather than strata. But that may be something that I'm not aware of. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Councillor Green. I believe all such units are stratifiable, but I'll turn to Mr. Green on that one. Mr. Green, is there, obviously there's some restrictions, suites and so forth can't be, but are there any other restrictions on the multi-unit housing that that are required in the community?
Yes, like I say, an applicant or a property owner has two options with SMU or infill housing of this nature, is that they can either rent out those units or they can create a building strata. And as the applicant stated, a strata conversion would include the existing residence, and so in normal circumstances, a building strata goes straight to LTSA for registration. However, in this case, where there is an existing conversion, then council is the decision maker in determining whether that building strata should be approved or not and complies with BC Building Code.
Interesting. It's a new one for me too. Mr. Cole, you wish to add to that?
Yeah, just to clarify, if I was to have torn the house down, I could have built two single-family homes and two accessory dwelling units further up on the bank. Would have been a lot more intrusive, of course, and it would have complied with all the zoning regulations, and I would not have to gone through the process of coming back to council or seek the variance. So really, the why we're sitting here today is really trying to do the right thing for the site. There would be no public process in the stratification. There would be no council. It would just be straight register. because of the fact that I'm keeping the existing house, and this was one of the things that I've advocated for early when these bylaws originally got adopted, in other municipalities like Victoria, staff actually have the delegated authority to approve these, so they don't have to come to council. And I think at some point, council is likely going to want to do that to encourage the retention of existing homes. Because I am taking a chance that for some reason council might say they want to just not do it, and then I'd have 2 rental houses and that would be it. I believe in the nature of what I've heard from what I see and what council's wanted with the housing retention is a key part of densification in this area and in the rest of Oak Bay. So that's why I chose to go this direction.
Thank you, Mr. Cole, for the further explanation. Councillor Green, did you have any other questions?
Thank you, no, thank you.
Councillor Braithwaite, you're up next, and then Councillor Smart.
Thanks very much. So just to clarify then, when you do a strata like this, it's almost like a subdivision because those houses are being sold and so no longer under the purview of the original house or the original property. Is that correct?
Mr. Cole?
I can answer that just because I've been involved in these. It's a building strata, so the reason that it's not a subdivision, it'll still be one lot and there'll be multiple residences on one lot. I guess to simplify, it's the same sort of situation as a duplex or a detached duplex. It's one lot and then they have common property as well as a dedicated area, limited common property as well as dedicated area of the land for the use of themselves. But it is not a subdivision.
Councillor Braithwaite, and not exactly the topic that we're here to discuss today, but appreciate the clarification at this time instead of 6 months or a year down the road. So please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm done.
Okay. Your hand is still raised, so maybe just lower that. Yeah, there we go. Are there any other questions? Oh, sorry, Councillor Smart, I had you on my list.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to staff. I just wanted to clarify the scope of council's discussion tonight through you, Mayor, to staff. So we're obviously not here tonight to talk about the provincial housing directives because those are not in our control. And we're not here to talk about the strata decision because that's not before us tonight. So my understanding is the one thing before us is this variance that has been discussed around the extra story. And I just wanted to clarify if this variance wasn't in front of us today, could staff just describe what I've been hearing is that the rest of the application would be able to move forward without this variance? Could you just clarify the process if this variance wasn't before us tonight? Thank you.
Thank you. Just for clarification, we have a upland siting and design and a variance, so there's 2 aspects, but Mr. Green?
That's exactly, through your worship, that's what I was going to say. There's 2 applications, and so just to correct the applicant, if council denied the variance and the applicant went away to, per se, do 2 duplexes or single family dwelling and a duplex, then that would still require an upland siting and design application, and that still would go through the advisory design panel and still come back to council.
Thank you. Anything? Okay, we're good. All clear. I think it doesn't hurt us to bring back to this piece. We have a report in front of us. We've had public input. We're back to this table, and probably appreciate a motion to receive the report to start with. Councillor Watson. Moved and seconded. There's a debate receipt. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Councillor Watson.
And I would like to move that development variance permit DVP 000171 to increase the maximum number of stories permitted for an accessory dwelling unit in the R2 zone for the property located at 3609 Beach Drive to accommodate the development of 2 new accessory dwelling units on a sloping lot be approved. I'll start with that,
Yeah,
or
let's keep them
let's
separate.
just start with that one.
Please,
Yeah,
please
okay.
just keep them. We'll keep them separate here.
Okay.
So the
And
DVP motion is moved and seconded.
okay,
Go ahead
thank
and speak to it.
Thank you. I think that this is a great example of doing something really innovative on a very unusual lot that has double frontage, where the rear actually is really the street-facing side of the lot. And I would say that this modern addition to the street is actually quite in keeping with some of the other things that are happening along the way. Not long ago, council approved the redevelopment of the lot at, I want to get the address right, at 3611 Cadboro Bay Road, which is just 3 properties to the north, which has, I mean, the treatment's certainly different, but this idea of using basically the rear side, but really the front-facing side of that property to bring in a really nicely situated garage right down at the front that steps up to the remodel, the new house that will go behind. And so I don't think that this is out of keeping with what's already happening in the neighborhood. And I think these houses are not going to be affordable to anybody but those of really a certain snack bracket. But they will contribute in a small but important way to increasing the housing stock. And since there is a real proposal on the table, we're not at risk of seeing a 1 for 4 or a 1 for 8 here. We actually have an agreement that would go forward to develop what we're being shown. So I'm fully supportive of the proposal. I'm sorry I wasn't at the advisory design panel the day it was presented. I was out of the country, but I understand that they are supporting it, and so I would like to move it forward.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Others wishing to speak? Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just build upon Councillor Watson's comment. Like, here is a project that has actually thoughtfully looked at the site and tried to work with the features of the site in place to make the best project going forward, looking at the topography, even looking at the parking issues. And so I appreciate the thoughtfulness that has been put into the application. And I think it's very supportable.
Thank you. I have Councillor Braithwaite online.
Thank you, Mayor. And I appreciate Councillor Watson's comments and would agree that this is a good-looking proposal. And I appreciate Mr. Cole for bringing this forward. However, I do think that we do need to kind of wait again and listen to what we're going to be hearing from our OCP review. So I really wish that this had been coming forward at a later date. So even though I'm supportive of what Mr. Cole is proposing for this site, I'm going to be voting against the motion because I do still want to wait until we hear more around our OCP. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. Any other discussion on this item before we call the question? I'm not seeing any. I'm going to speak briefly. So just, I'm speaking in support of the DVP and the siting and design, and I appreciated the speaker talking to this and the letters that have been written. I think, they raise important questions, and the Uplands is unique, and in particular the requirement for the garden-like setting and of course also just the uniqueness of design required within the Uplands. That's part of the setting and design pieces of it. The highest level there is really just making sure that the high quality of siting and design, of the design work and the fitting into the environment makes sense. And that's largely done through setbacks. It's largely done through maintenance of green space. So I think this one deserves a comment because it doesn't use those tools here. In fact, it's being on the rear side, it doesn't have the same setback requirements. So it's not asking for variance there so much, but but the height of these makes a more imposing aspect onto that beach drive face. To my thinking on this one, I think the third story of the ADU here would not generally be supportable, but it is in fact, I think, a combination of of using that rhythm of garage spaces off of Beach Drive. They don't typically have houses directly above them. But the rock wall and garage space rhythm is maintained, and there's sort of an architectural nod to that. And that positioning, of course, requires, with the slope of the land, some aspect of those buildings to fit there. I do think that asking for a smaller buildings in that space would actually be out of rhythm. I think there's a couple of design houses that are set farther back but have sort of similar feel to them, and these are certainly high quality. So, you know, I think this is one of those ones that doesn't naturally fit into the design guidelines. But I did attend the design panel because the liaison and the alternate were neither available, so I did sit and listen to the architects go through it. And you know, at the end of the day, I think this is using our best judgment as to whether or not we feel that the application and development will fit. And to my mind, while it's a change, it fits with the overall intent of the Uplands. And again, the quality of these is without question. I think they'll look good, but they will change the rhythm of that space. But I don't think this is it's certainly not a cookie cutter. It's a one-off thoughtfulness. And I do want to also just acknowledge, I think we do want to support the retention of some of these older homes. The renovation in this case and restoration is a benefit. So I don't want to just forget mentioning that as well as part of the overall. It doesn't directly apply to the variance application, but I think it weighs into my decision making on this factor. So thank you. When we have people opposed, I always like taking a moment just to sort of articulate my rationale. Any other discussion on this? I'm going to call the question. This is just on the variance, not on the siting and design, but, oh, my apologies.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. There is just a correction in the recommendation that was read out. The 3609 Beach Drive should be replaced with a Cadboro Bay Road address. So if we can just note that, we can proceed. And it will be the same for the next recommendation if you proceed with that.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. We do want to read them in accurately. So with that understanding of the change, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And those opposed? Councillor Braithwaite?
Opposed.
Opposed.
Yes,
So we have one
thank you.
opposed. That carries. Have the same mover and seconder for the Upland Siting and Design for 3609 Cadboro Bay Road. Same mover and seconder. Any further discussion? I know I separated them, but I think we talked to both aspects. Any other discussion? I'm not seeing any. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed?
Opposed.
Councillor Braithwaite opposed. That does carry. Thank you for that.
Time.
Can I just get a motion to extend the meeting by, we've got some time on this next one, probably, not massive amounts, maybe another 20 minutes?
Your Worship, I will move to extend the meeting until 10:20.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. Appreciate this is a very, it's an emptying of the room here. 10.2 Upland Siting and Design and DVP for 3400 Upper Terrace Road. Mr. Green, back to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. The district has received an upland siting and design application and the development variance permit for the property located at 3400 Upper Terrace Road. The purpose of the applications are to allow for the construction of a new single-family dwelling, which would contain a secondary suite and an accessory building that would include an accessory dwelling unit. The proposed design includes variances to the rear, side and combined side lot line setbacks and to the required separation between all buildings and structures. Staff believe the proposed variance requests are supportable when taken into consideration with the unusual lot configuration and the imposing lot line setbacks. The application was presented to the advisory design panel on April the 8th of this year, and the ADP recommended the application be approved. Notice was mailed to all properties and residents within 50 metres of the subject property as per the district's development applications procedure bylaw, and correspondence received to the application has been added to the council agenda. The applicant and designer, as well as the owner, are also here to answer any questions that council may have. I believe they are online.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation. Same process as before, so if there's people from the public who wish to speak to us, that opportunity will come. We'll go to questions first, then the public, and then back to this table. Are there questions from members of council, either to the applicant or to staff? Not seeing any immediate ones. I'll give people a chance to kind of bring it up there. I will then turn to the members of the public. Is a member of the public wish to speak to this application? This is for 3400 Upper Terrace Road. Anybody online from the public wishing to address us? Just raise your hand in the application in the Zoom. All right, seeing no members of the public wishing to address us on this application, we'll bring back to this table. Any questions that have arisen in the time? Go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to the applicant. I guess I'm just looking for sort of the broad, I'm gathering by the sort of general approach and by the rationale that's provided here that the idea is to situate essentially as far back into the corner of the lot as possible and maintain as much sort of streetscape and tree canopy in front of the building as possible. That's what seems to be the motivation to me. It does put it fairly tight to the back lot lines, and so just wondering, you know, is that the intent, just to minimize sort of the massing from the street side, from the Uplands Road side, and what's been the feedback from the neighbors about the relaxation and the, you know, sort of a fairly massive building sitting close to the lot line adjacent to the two properties to the west and south?
I'll pass that over to the applicant. Please go ahead.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. My name is Robert Blaney. I am the applicant for the project representing the owners of 3400 Upper Terrace. This project has been a very long process in the making. We very early on realized that the siting of the property was going to be contrary to our original beliefs. And when the application first went into City Hall, last July, I believe, July of 2024, we realized we were going to have much greater setback issues than we originally had set forth. This property, you know, as one of the last speakers says, one size doesn't fit all, and the bylaws for this specific property go against the grain of its very unusual shape. And it's unusual for one specific reason, and that is that it is a continuous curve across the front property line. If there was even the smallest break in the front property line, we would have the advantage of a flanking street setback, which would pull this house fully out of any yard variances. So due to that, what has happened, and I'll speak to the intention of where we have ended up, is that we followed through with what would be the minimum side yard setback for a home in the Uplands. The other piece of the rationale here that we noted was that the lot breadth is measured diagonally on this lot due to the front curvature on Upper Terrace, thus making the lot breadth extremely wide. Now, that gives this lot the unfortunate side yard setbacks of a interchangeable 15-foot and 25-foot side yard, or a combined total of 40 feet, which is the equivalent of a property, you know, at least 2x this size. This property sits at 13,777 square feet. And so our determination after receiving that information came that the building envelope only allowed us the opportunity for a 3,257 square foot site coverage, which is well under the allowable. In that 3,277 square feet, and with the curvature, we had to fit the garage, the accessory structure pool, and the home footprint. On top of that, we also discovered that the possibility of boulder underneath and blasting would be a possibility. And so we decided to design a 2-floor home above ground. Now, looking at the neighbors, this is the long and short of it. And I apologize for the long answer, but I really feel like I have to be thorough here, because the thought of this home, you know, the thoughtfulness of this home with the neighbors in mind is where we've landed today. And that is that there is very, very large hedging down the south side of the property between the existing neighbor to the south and this home. And so we use that to influence the design in one of the property lines that could benefit from the already existing privacy. The other portion that we looked at was containing the windows looking into the neighbors' yards, not directly at the neighbors, but pointed more to the north and the east away from the neighbors. The traditional thought process with these lots is put a house in the middle of the lot and have yard space all the way around it. The current home design actually is designed so that the neighbor behind, I believe the neighbor that wrote the letter to council today, actually only has one story of housing in front of the rear of his property, leaving the open space and the light to come through unobstructed. All the windows, I would say the majority of the windows are focused towards the current design's courtyard, making this house extremely private to not just the future residents of this home, but also the neighbors. And that's why the home today is sited the way that it is.
Thank you. I have a natural follow-up to the question, because just looking at the existing photos, ortho photos, it looks like the current house is situated back in this corner, a little bit different location and format, but can you give us a sense of how this proposed design compares to the current building that's on the site?
Yeah, so the current building is erected right in the middle of the property. Our building is actually moved quite further towards the south, and you would think that'd be counterproductive to what would be the ideal lighting and livability, but that is where the greatest amount of privacy sits between the neighbors, is that southern boundary. And so, you know, as designers, we look at how these are going to impact the neighbors. And when we found out that a variance is going to be requested, we looked at all these factors. So long and short again is that we moved the house further to the south.
Thank you very much for that. Are there other questions for members of council for the applicant or to staff? I'm going to seek motions then to at least get on the floor the, sorry, my apologies, I've moved my notes over, upland setting and design and DVP, so motion received. Oh, go ahead, Councilor.
I just had one quick question.
Please go ahead.
Through you, Mayor, to the applicant, there was another mention in the letter specifically about the concern about the heat pump being placed in that reduced setback, and I just wondered if the applicant was willing to share if there were sound mitigating strategies for that heat pump.
Sure. To the applicant.
Yeah, I mean, although, you know, mechanical is not something that we've dove into just yet, I think it goes without saying that these neighbors do communicate, and they have had many interactions in the past. And although the neighbor to the west has written that letter, we have had Zoom meetings with that neighbor and communication with that neighbor, and it is the intent of the current owners to, you know, not falter on that relationship. And, you know, I can say on behalf of the neighbors that no heat pump or mechanics are going to be put in a side yard that's going to disturb that neighbor's relationship.
I'm seeking motions then. Can I get a motion to receive? Moved. Is there a motion to receive? Yeah, sorry, moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? Then I'll seek some direction from council here, please. I'll probably suggest somebody move the motion. We can debate that. It's easier than anything else. And we can start with the DVP, probably is the simplest.
I'll move the staff recommendation of the report. Oh, we've done that one. That the upland siting and design, ADP 00179 and development variance permit DVP 000162 to allow for the construction of a single-family home with a secondary suite, a detached accessory dwelling unit, and accessory building, a pool and a hot tub on the property located at 3400 Upper Terrace be approved.
Let's move. Is there a seconder? Seconded. Thank you. Do you wish to speak? Anybody on the application? Councillor Watson?
Yes, I didn't see the fulsome presentation again because unfortunately I missed the advisory design planning meeting, but I think that this is a reasonable approach to dealing with a very unusual lot, as the applicant has pointed out, in terms of its broad, broad curve on that bend in the road, and it's a fairly kind of nice modern example of some intensification of the site, and we get, a home that's definitely showing its age to be replaced with three dwelling units, including secondary suites. No stratification suggested here, so under the control of the owner. I think that It's a reasonable proposal, and I'm happy to support it.
Thank you for that. Any other discussion before I call the question? Not seeing any. I will call the question. All those in favor? And those opposed? I just want to note that in the interim here, we have lost Councillor Braithwaite. I do not see her online. So I just, I think in the last couple of minutes, we've lost her. So that was a total of 6, not 7. We did move those together. I hope that's acceptable from a motion perspective. Moving on to 10.3, we have a tax rates bylaw. The tax financial plan has been approved, so we're back just doing some of the actual bylaw changes. Ms. LaChance, did you wish? I'm going to say no. You don't wish to speak to this. I'm going to just perhaps get a motion to receive the report first of all. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Then we have a recommendation here given for second reading, but first we'll go to questions, if there's any questions that people have. And I'll turn to the members of the public as well. Thank you very much to the other applicants for joining us, and have a good day, have a good night. Any members of the public who wish to make comments or questions on 10.3, the 2025 Tax Rates Bylaw? Not seeing any, so okay, we can take motions here then. Go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. So I would move that council give first and second reading to Tax Rates Bylaw 2025 number 4906.
Moved. Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Very briefly, Your Worship, I would just like to point out just in this forum, seeing as how we're now moving into the process of finalizing the tax rates, just wanted to note how significant I thought it was that several members of the public at our recent town hall brought up the subject of tax rates. We're connecting very strongly the nature of tax rates, the impending borrowing that the district will have to contemplate, and essentially, and had I think a good, healthy conversation with the community about tax rates and how as they relate to the tax base for the district, and some of the forced gross costs that are factored into this tax rate as well. So I was really pleased that the community was having that discussion, because this will be a recurrent theme over subsequent years when we discuss the tax rates. So this is the final step in a process, and really now a procedural element, but wrapped into that is an increased awareness in the community of some of the challenges we've got in front of us in subsequent years with this tax rate. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, and then move third reading.
I would move, Your Worship, that council give third reading to Tax Rates Bylaw 2025 number 4906.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That'll come back for adoption at a future meeting. We move to 10.4, 2025 Boulevard Tax. Oh, yeah, we've got time. Can I just have a motion to receive the report? Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? Unopposed? I'm going to go to the public to see if there's any members of the public who wish to address us on the 2025 Boulevard Tax Rates Amendment Bylaw. Given there was nothing on the taxes, I'm not anticipating a waive, but I'll give it a chance. Not seeing any, I'll come back to this table.
Your Worship, I would move that council give first and second reading to Boulevard Frontage Tax Bylaw 1982, number 3416, Amendment Bylaw number 4907, 2025.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed.
And Your Worship, I would move that council give third reading to Boulevard Frontage Tax Bylaw 1982, number 3416, Amendment Bylaw number 4907, 2025.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. No, we don't usually debate on third. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. We move to new business. I did put a notice of motion. This wasn't for discussion tonight. It's for, it'll come back to a future council meeting. Any other new business? No. So seeing that, I will call a question. The first someone to move adjournment. Moved in second. Oh, no. We just did that. Do we need to read it into the piece, or just acknowledge that it was there on this and it'll come back? Okay. All right. So we need a motion to adjourn. Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? Unopposed? We do have a little bit of outstanding in-camera business that we'll come back to, so I think once we clear the room, we'll come back into for those